first meeting. The minutes were submitted with the packet. I'll give you all just a minute to take a quick look at those. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alderwoman Saunier and a second from Commissioner Fowler. Can you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier.
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler.
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman.
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Aye.
Chair Bradley.
Aye.
Motion passes with all present voting aye.
Thank you. Next order of business tonight is a public hearing. And so tonight, we are going to handle a very complicated and complex item with data centers and the city's approach to regulating them. The meeting will include a presentation by staff, discussion and question from the commissioners, and then a public hearing. If you'd like to participate in the public hearing, please sign up in the room or put your name in the Zoom chat roughly by about 6:15 or so. So again, if you'd like to participate in the public hearing, please sign up in the room or put your name in the Zoom chat by about 6:15. Important to note that we will not be voting on this item tonight. Written comments will be kept open and the hearing will be continued at a future date. Tonight, we're going to keep the public hearing portion open for about 2 hours, and we'll talk about the specifics of the public hearing portion once the staff has finished their presentation. So at this time, I'll ask for Miriam and Elysia to make their presentation on PDA 003-26 ZTX, preliminary zoning framework for data centers.
Great, thank you. Great. Lose the mic here. I want to start by thanking members of the public for taking time out of their schedule to join us this evening. This is an important topic, and we need to hear from the public. So this slide here, well, I'll pause and introduce myself. My name is Miriam Keller. I'm City Planning Executive for General Planning and Design with the city's Planning and Urban Design Agency. I am joined by Elysia Russell, the City Sustainability Director. We were part of the team that worked on the research and drafting this preliminary set of regulations. So you'll hear from us tonight, but there are many other staff present from the Planning Department, from the Zoning Section, from the Health Department, and others who can help answer specific questions that commissioners may have. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so this is a zoning text amendment. And the purpose of this ultimately, though as Acting Chair Bradley noted, there will not be a vote tonight, is ultimately to establish zoning regulations for data centers. Tonight, we are not discussing the proposal for a data center in the Midtown area. There will be hearing at a separate meeting for that topic. And tonight, we as staff are recommending that the item be continued and the public comment and public hearing be continued to a future meeting so that we can incorporate the feedback we hear tonight and also extend the opportunity for public comment. If and when the Planning Commission votes to recommend these regulations, there will also be a future hearing at the Board of Aldermen during that legislative process. Next slide. So Elysia and I are going to try to very quickly present a lot of complex information. We do want to provide this framing, but we are going to try to move at a clip to make sure that we're not waiting very long until you all have the opportunity to speak in the public hearing. The data centers, of course, are facilities that store data and provide compute power for a range of functions. I think everybody in this room is probably very familiar with the incredible boom and investment in this data infrastructure, with data centers being a core part. These maps from the Renewable Energy Laboratory represent the sort of scale of existing data center capacity and operation, some of the planned operating capacity, and some of what the total would look like over the next couple of years. This is only to demonstrate really the incredible scale of what is underway in this country and globally. This is a very big, challenging topic. Where we are right now as a city with our zoning code is that we do not have any specific regulations for data centers. They're treated as warehousing, which means they're a conditional use in many zoning districts and are actually permitted by right in other districts, such as downtown and in industrial districts. Next slide, please. We're operating under this sort of interim framework right now established by Executive Order 92 and Resolution 111, which 5 months ago put in place, kind of recognizing that we are not well positioned as a city with kind of our no regulations in our zoning code. So this executive order kind of set that data centers would be a conditional use in districts F through L. There's a very detailed question set applied to any applicant. And this executive order directed us as staff to bring forward regulations within 5 months. So that's what brings us here tonight. And what the executive order and resolution asks us to look at are acceptable zoning districts for the use, minimum separation requirements, building compatibility, noise limitations, screening, and public outreach and engagement in the regulations. So that is what we've attempted to do. So tonight, based on research, we've prepared a very preliminary set of recommended regulations. Ultimately, for these to be enacted, the Planning Commission would need to recommend regulations, and then they'd be enacted through the legislative process at the Board of Aldermen. So just to give you a sense of what our research included, many interviews with subject matter experts and a variety of stakeholders. We participated in webinars and roundtables, reviewed what we could find on the topic. We visited some existing data centers in the region. We reviewed a lot of cities' zoning regulations to see how other cities were handling this. We spoke to those other cities and spoke also with other departments within the city to try to coordinate. And yes, we are recommending that we be given some time to refine these and keep public hearing open. Next slide. So some overarching themes to start: that data centers are part of supporting our increasingly digital economy. Our economy is changing very rapidly in this direction. Data centers are part of that. There are many, many environmental impacts and other concerns that we've heard, that we have read about. And these include some of the concerns about AI and its role in our economy. Another very important theme, I think, is that this is a very complex and rapidly changing topic. I think wherever we land as a city, we will need to iterate how we approach this because the industry technology is very rapidly developing. And I just want to recognize there are lots of unknowns and uncertainties about data centers and the sort of industry surrounding them. I also want to recognize that at the same time, an overly restrictive approach to these could mean that we could lose out on some of the benefits of participating in this evolving economy. So it's a very serious and challenging balancing act. Couple of themes and findings. We'll walk through each again very quickly, and I'll hand it over to Alicia.
Hi, good evening. So theme 1, energy and water use. So it's the general understanding, data centers use an enormous amount of energy for both their servers and their cooling needs. So a lot of that energy, a good portion of it goes to just cooling the servers themselves, but also the servers as they run. The energy intensity is incredibly high compared to other building uses, and it's really rapidly changing. We have seen some opportunities from other cities where they've had creative projects to use waste heat from data centers to meet other needs. And another trend that we see is that servers and data centers have become more and more powerful over time in a very short amount of time. So their energy density is increasing. Alongside with this, the water usage is very high, but it actually really depends on the cooling system. So there are trade-offs between having a more air-cooled system or a water-cooled system or something in between, a hybrid using different types of technology. intense water usage can be a huge issue when using groundwater in an agricultural rural area. And it's our understanding that the city's water division actually has more than enough capacity to serve a data center or other, large water users like hospitals or hotels. And like I mentioned, there are trade-offs between energy and efficiency or water efficiency and the initial investment that a data center is putting into its building itself. So with water outputs, these need to be treated adequately, and this would be subject to MSD's requirements. And the chart on the right is a little hard to see, but essentially it shows that there are different types of cooling processes that can be used to save water or save energy. Next slide. Alongside this, we do have an opportunity within the city to access the steam loop and the planned chilled water loop. These are very important assets to us. So with data centers connecting to these, there's a potential to reduce demand on the electric grid and create a pathway for heat recovery and reuse. And also data center development can help facilitate expansion of the district energy system itself in ways that benefit the city and other future users. Next. And then here's just a broad map of where the existing steam loop is downtown, mostly in the pinkish purple area, and then the general area that would be served by the chilled water loop when that comes online. So within the zoning approach to this to address energy and water use, we're asking or suggesting that we have data centers require a disclosure of their energy needs and expected energy and water efficiency. They're encouraged to have early engagement with the water division around site-specific water issues, set many and specific building energy efficiency standards such as LEED certification, and encourage and require connection to the district energy system, as well as a handful of renewable energy requirements. But beyond zoning, there are some other considerations that need to be taken into account, such as energy and water monitoring, e-waste recycling requirements, and then a special water rate framework that the Water Division is currently working on. Oops. So with this, there's a need for an access to power. Data centers want to be close to that infrastructure. They obviously need a lot of power to run. And so this map shows where the high voltage utility line infrastructure exists within the city, which is a key driver in site selection. So within St. Louis, most of that high voltage runs primarily through industrial areas and along old railroad rights of way. And so these generally align with our historical industrial districts, with downtown being somewhat of an exception. So with this high energy demand, utilities across the country are, at the race to meet these growing energy demands from data centers. The new demand means new power generation and new transmission infrastructure. So thanks to Senate Bill 4 and large load tariffs, transmission costs are borne by the customer or the developer if that development is going to use over 75 megawatts of power. However, new energy generation costs are most likely to affect all ratepayers. So anywhere within our utility territory, the construction costs or developing of that new energy generation will be anywhere in that territory that ratepayers would pay. So within that, I mentioned SB 4 and large load tariffs. This was a bill recently passed. And so with that, who's regulating this type of authority? That is the Public Service Commission. They're the state regulatory authority that makes these decisions and processes this information. They set the rates. They allow and approve new energy generation. So recently, SB 4 was passed, which changed a few things, but also included the large load tariff example. So any developer that wants to connect to the grid in Ameren's or Missouri's territory, they have to have a special rate class within that, and they have to abide by certain contractual terms to protect that type of energy investment. Within that, there were a few consumer protections, including a cap on the utility's return on equity, which could help large load customers offset the cost for low-income customers, and also expansion of renewable clean energy. So it's important to note that the city can request information from the Public Service Commission and our utility around the impacts. We can also intervene and comment in PSC decisions, but we do not control the rates. On the flip side, some of the largest potential end users of data centers do have environmental or social goals, so there could be something driving towards more clean energy for data centers. However, back on the other side of the coin, we have seen some scenarios in the news of data centers coming online before they're able to connect to the grid. So they're using diesel generators as their primary source of power, and that is not what we want to happen in St. Louis. So within the zoning approach, we're asking to require the full picture up front. So what does that new transmission infrastructure look like? What substation upgrades or developments need to happen? We want to understand the status and agreement of work with the electric service providers. We're going to require a willing to serve letter from the utility prior to providing a certificate of occupancy and encourage connection to district energy. But beyond zoning, there are some tools that could be used, such as development agreements or developing programs that help reduce energy burden. So as we know, data centers come in many, many different sizes. They could range from, a telecom, non-manned location to a corporate enterprise, so a floor of a large corporation, to something bigger like a co-location or wholesale data center that would have, essentially rent data center space to different companies. And then hyperscale data centers, which are built for those large single customers like Google or Amazon. And that's where we really see resources scale up with energy demand there. And it's important to note that, AI could and may be integrated into most functions of all data centers, but generative AI is a distinct technology, and that's where we really see the very high intensive water demand and energy demand. So with those examples, here's a few pictures of various data centers, in the city as well as in the region. So they're kind of just incorporated already to some extent. But often what we're hearing about in the news are these very large hyperscale campus examples. This one's from New Albany, Ohio. So this is millions of square feet, hundreds of acres, hundreds of megawatts, probably over a gigawatt. And this is what's usually proposed in rural or ex-urban environments. This scale is not appropriate or possible in the city. Go to the next slide. So within the city context, why do data centers want to come to the city? Well, as we shared a little bit earlier, the energy transmission infrastructure is here, as well as the internet fiber connections. Our water system has significant access capacity. However, it is in need of upgrades. So we may see maybe more on the lower end size of data centers in the area, in the city within itself, that extend the networks of these big hyperscalers and improve reliability for the data networks. So within the zoning approach itself, we've categorized data centers into 3 different sizes, not just based off square footage, but primarily on power demand. There are different standards for these different groupings of data centers, application requirements, and location allowances, and there's a 500,000 square foot cap on size. I'll pass it back to Miriam.
Another theme in our research was urban vitality, which is a priority of the city and the community. So it is true that it's not a very employment dense in terms of permanent employment use, and there are visits by customers, but they're maybe not highly frequent. So data centers in and of themselves are not examples of a very active use. However, there are examples across the country and even here in the city of mixed-use data centers with an active ground floor or with data center and office being integrated into the same development. Data centers also could represent infrastructure that can help attract or retain businesses downtown in the city. And by that, I mean businesses that have a lot of demand for very proximate access to compute power. So we did want to address this in our proposed zoning regulations. So we are requiring some space for an active use on the ground floor outside of industrial districts. And we're limiting more industrial scale data centers to industrial districts. Those really cannot be very successfully integrated into mixed use parts of our city. Another important theme is the impact of data centers on the surrounding area. They can emit significant noise. The backup generators can create significant emissions and do require regular testing to make sure that they are, in fact, in good working order, and also to maintain compliance with federal regulations that are administered by state Department of Natural Resources. And it's true, accessory equipment, if it's not properly screened, can create some visual clutter. New substations may be required. Those also have to be part of the picture of a development. But cities very commonly establish noise, screening, and buffering requirements. There are fairly good tools for screening, and we're, I think, actively learning more and hope to refine some of the emission standards for generators. Next slide. So some of the approach here is to establish minimum spacing requirements between larger data centers and sensitive uses, such as housing, land that could become housing, parks, faith buildings, schools. We're setting noise standards and requiring noise reporting, setting requirements to enclose or screen accessory equipment, establishing actually landscaping standards and cool or green roof standards to mitigate the urban heat island effect of very large flat roofs that, if not designed accordingly or appropriately, could absorb a lot of heat. And we would prohibit non-emergency generator use and also kind of limit the timing of when testing could happen. There are tools outside of zoning, like peak demand performance controls, that should also be encouraged. There's another kind of general theme around transparency and uncertainty in this industry. Best practice publications from the American Planning Association and others really reinforce that it's critical to capture the full picture of a proposal upfront in order to understand both its challenges and benefits. So that is what we seek to do with the application requirements and the proposed regulations. However, in some cases, important details may not be available or shared at the zoning application stage. The end user or even the economic impact really does depend on a couple of things, like the replacement rate of really high value equipment and how that translates into personal property tax revenue. So, you know, it's a balancing act with getting information, but also understanding it all. There are also a lot of questions about the data center industry and kind of the future of the AI sort of economy. Another very common recommendation of sort of best practice reports around the country is to in whatever way we can, try to achieve some upfront financial or other community benefits, in part to mitigate against future risk. Also to make sure there's some transparency into the operations, particularly around the environmental impact or potential environmental impact. But participation in this growing economy and all of the construction jobs it could create, which I'll come to in a second, could bring benefits to the region, real benefits, and these benefits could be lost through an overly restrictive approach. So again, just a balancing act. So with the zoning approach, we're including a detailed question set, and we've already received great feedback from the community and others about other questions we might consider asking. For the largest category of data center, we are requiring sort of enhanced community engagement requirements prior to anybody even making an application to the city. And the conditional use approach ensures that there's room and space for due diligence and proposal-specific decision-making. But there are tools beyond zoning that merit consideration, again, like development or community benefits agreements. Some communities are starting to explore restrictions on the use of NDAs. An important theme, this is really the upside, right, about the fiscal and economic impacts of data centers. Fiscal benefits can be very significant. Data centers entail very extensive capital investment through both construction, but also ongoing recurring equipment upgrades and sort of continued purchases. So real estate and especially personal property tax revenues are very high, and revenue to a city and to our school district and other taxing jurisdictions, that has real meaning, real value to schools, to our ability to provide quality city services. These also require and entail many, many construction jobs and very kind of high skill, complex trades participating in these developments. And because these require frequent upgrades to systems, some of these jobs are kind of replenishing is a term that some people use, that because it's not just a one-time thing, they require a lot of upgrades. There are fewer permanent jobs. However, the permanent jobs are fairly high skill and high paid. And data centers can strengthen other local industries. Compute-intensive functions are increasingly integrated into healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and other industries. There is a role and importance of like proximity with data and compute power because that mitigates latency or the potential delay in accessing data. And there's the potential to support existing local businesses. Some of our existing data centers are simply storing data for local businesses, right? That data does need to be stored in some secure location, or even anchor new businesses that are looking for great compute power very close to their new location. Now, it's also true that the increasing integration of AI into our economy is expected to displace jobs kind of no matter where data centers are built. That is a significant challenge and concern. So part of this factors into the zoning approach in providing pathways for small and medium-sized data centers downtown where they can be co-located with or supportive of other businesses that we'd want to attract or retain downtown, and use our application requirements to shed light on some of what the expected economic benefits would be. But tools outside of zoning, like development or community benefits agreements, can help strengthen what we can do with zoning. I mentioned we also looked at what other cities are doing. I think the key takeaway from some of this precedent research is everybody is grappling with this. There are some cities we reached out to that we thought like, oh, certainly they seem to know exactly what they're doing. But then when we spoke with them, it's like, oh, we're thinking about this too. We might make some changes. We're figuring this out. Things are changing all the time. But there are very common concerns that cities recognize and try to address: noise, vibrations, light, intensive utility usage. Maintaining vibrant, walkable urban spaces is a very common concern that cities have. Most cities do allow data centers by right in at least one zoning district, but there's precedent to do many of the things that we're proposing to do, requiring disclosure of expected utility usage, managing noise, setting aside active ground floor space, using renewable energy and or recycled water, closed loop systems, and requiring visual or acoustic buffering. The next slide shows a table of some of the cities we looked at, some of how their zoning stacks up, whether they have definitions for data centers, whether they're by right districts, conditional use districts, and so on. Toward the bottom, we have the city currently, where, right now, as I mentioned before, we have really no regulations. We do, under the executive order and resolution 111, have conditional use districts, but not a structured process outside of that. What we're proposing to do kind of at the highest level is borrow from the best of what other cities are doing and try to integrate that into our city in a way that makes sense for St. Louis. Next slide. All right, so that was some background. Now I'm going to very quickly flip through an outline of the zoning recommendations. We also printed out a kind of 4-page document that consolidates all of those in one place. Those are, I think we have extra copies of those around somewhere. But I'll just very quickly flip through so everybody's on the same page about what all is involved. So these are the components. And first is a new chapter. This just means we're getting all of the information in one place instead of scattered throughout our code. it would have a purpose statement just describing what we're trying to achieve. Definitions. For a data center, of course, I'll pause just a bit here to describe these three different thresholds of data centers. We're calling them micro, standard, and large load. Micro would be smaller than 10,000 square feet and less than 5 megawatts. Standard would be a pretty broad category between 5 megawatts and 75. Large load data centers is 75 megawatts and above. That matches that threshold established by the large load tariffs that Ameren is now operating under. Just to explain what 10,000 square feet looks like, there's a couple of examples. It's about the footprint of the ground floor of J International Food. That's about 10,000 square feet, or it's about 3/4 the size of a standard CVS. And of course, it could be in many formats. And again, outside of industrial districts, we are requiring a set aside of some amount of the ground floor for an active use. Many other definitions, including renewable energy, we already got some great feedback that gone ahead to incorporate in not referencing the state's definition and kind of keeping it a little bit clearer and simple to the intent. District energy system. Cool roof also got some feedback. So couldn't a green roof be one way of achieving a cool roof? I think that's a great, easy addition. Closed loop cooling system, transit center. Okay, the next component is the use table we're establishing. This is a summary, of course, but what you can see here is that each type of data center has a different set of districts that it might be allowed in either conditionally or by right. So micro would be conditional in our districts H through L, but permitted by right in industrial districts. I have a map here on the next page. Standard would be restricted to downtown and industrial districts as just a conditional use, and large load data centers would be restricted to the most intensive industrial district that is in our city. Just a little bit of explanation about the conditional use process. I don't want to assume everybody's familiar with it. So a conditional use is a land use that kind of might be appropriate in a given zoning district with additional oversight, and it must adhere to special conditions. The conditions matter because violation of a condition or requirement does create the potential for revocation of an occupancy permit if there's not meaningful progress in coming into compliance. I want to talk about how this is different from a variance, which is an exception to a specific regulation in our zoning code. A conditional use, by contrast, is additional control. And variances, and the reason we don't want to rely on them is that they run with the land and could be transferred to any future applicant seeking approval of the same use or seeking the same exception. But conditional use permits are tied to a specific applicant or operator. So there's a lot of detail under that, but I did want to describe a little bit about what it means for a use to be conditional. Here's a zoning map for reference. All of these slides, of course, we can come back to during commission discussion. I want to compare the use table of the proposed approach to where we are under the executive order and resolution. So that middle interim approach, you can see data centers of any kind would be conditional in districts F through L. And then before the executive order was enacted, they were conditional in F through H, which are some of our kind of neighborhood commercial districts, and then permitted by right in districts I through L, no matter the size. So again, this explains some of the actions that were taken to kind of get an interim approach in place and then directing us to establish or recommend some regulations of some kind. Application requirements. There's a lot we would be seeking from all data center applicants, more that we would be seeking from standard and large load data center applicants. I've added something suggested by a commenter, and then more for standard and large load data centers here. And here's some more. For large load data centers, that largest category, we're asking a bit more, including a detailed description of sources and uses to evaluate kind of the strength of the project, asking about community benefits offered, and also plans to remove infrastructure should the facility cease operation. And we're also establishing a community engagement requirement that would be expected before an applicant submits an application. We've received some great feedback here that we need to better define what we mean by notice and the project details that should be disclosed. So we'll be doing that as we refine these. We've received a lot of other great feedback, even just today, that we haven't yet incorporated, of course. Site requirements. There are some related to location. So a minimum 300-foot distance from a parcel, including the data center, to light rail stations, transit centers, anything zoned residential, including things that may be vacant today, could become housing in the future, or anything that is actively in use as residential or housing, faith buildings, schools, and public parks. We are carving out some exemptions for standard data centers so that they could be integrated downtown. We've gotten some feedback expressing concern about that, though I do think having some flexibility downtown could still make sense. Micro data centers also are granted a little bit more flexibility. I think all of this merits refinement. Here's an explanation of the spacing requirements. So no part of the subject parcel for a data center could be within 300 feet of any of the sensitive uses that I described on the previous slide. So kind of in this scenario, even though some of the parcels are industrial and may be in the right zoning category, a data center could only be on parcels completely outside of that buffer. Just an explanation of exactly what's at work with the language. Here's a very rough map showing how the zoning districts and location requirements kind of overlay with one another. I think this is very instructive, can help us probably refine the buffer that we are recommending. We also have a section about reporting requirements, including noise. Oops. Requiring noise reporting, not just a maximum decibel level, an annual noise reporting requirement to the health department. A section about building and site design, that data centers be operated with a closed loop system, though we got some feedback about tightening up that definition. Cool roof, full enclosure of backup generators and other screening, some landscaping requirements. A requirement that LEED certification or kind of a similar certification system be achieved. And then here's a category of just other standards. So this is where you see that set aside of ground floor area, that maximum physical size of 500,000 square feet, a clarification that heightened setback requirements apply, a specific parking requirement because underlying parking requirements don't make sense for a less employment dense location. Limitations on when generators could be tested. One important thing I want to pause on here for a moment is that operation may not commence until a willing to serve letter is provided. This is a letter from an electric service utility saying we have capacity and the infrastructure in place to service this location. I think getting this right is really important in preventing that scenario where a facility relies on backup generators as a primary source of energy. That is something we absolutely can and should avoid. Other cities are doing this as well. We also, go back one here, we are suggesting a requirement to connect to district energy systems. And then we are proposing some renewable energy requirements that would phase in. I think this is something where we need to do a lot more to refine these to hit the right balance. But this is very important in mitigating the climate impact of just the intense energy use. final section here is an internal review process so that all departments have the opportunity to weigh in from their perspective in the conditional use process. So in summary, these are sort of the challenges and opportunities. Here's how all of the different sections of the zoning approach kind of figure into that. And then again, just bringing back the concept of, I think zoning on its own cannot achieve all of the things that we as a city might want to. So kind of bringing to light some of the other tools again, like a special water rate, the role of energy and water monitoring, and the potential for community benefit agreements. We've received a lot of great content. This is as of 2 p.m. today. 46 survey responses and 10 emails to the commission. If you submit a comment after this, we still have absolutely received it. It'll be shared with commissioners. And we are keeping written comment open, even past this meeting. But we asked, should data centers under the right conditions be allowed in the city of St. Louis? 9 respondents said yes, 34 said no, 11 were undecided in their response. Some folks saw strengths in the approach that we put out there. Folks also flagged a lot of concerns. I think primarily just opposition to data centers as a use at all, a concern about their environmental harm, and also some very specific things about the buffer being too lenient. And many suggested additions. Those are summarized here. And I'll say not all of these things can effectively or legally be achieved through zoning, but this is really valuable feedback. So with that, we thought it would help to offer the commission kind of chance for some discussion and clarifying questions before opening the public hearing.
Thank you, ladies, for your presentation. At this time, we'll go through a list of commissioners and see if they have any questions. We'll start online with Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation greatly. I'm sorry that I'm not here in person today. I have a 3-month-old at home, and I thought it made more sense to be able to be in the meeting for the entirety and stay virtual than be there in person and have to leave during public comment. So thank you all for being here and for speaking. I was lucky enough to be in many of the stakeholder meetings, so I had a chance to ask many of my questions and express my thoughts and concerns about this use directly to staff. And I appreciate the time that's been taken. I will not ask any questions this evening just to cut down on the amount of time before we get to public comment, but I do want to just plug an upcoming event. The Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee will be meeting next week, Wednesday, February 18th at 3:30 p.m. in the Kennedy Room at City Hall. Ameren will be presenting about large load tariffs. I believe there's some limitations to those that do negatively impact consumers more than we really understand so far for other sizes of data centers outside of the really large ones. So I'm hoping to get a lot more clarification about the impact on consumers, which I think is very important for this discussion overall. So again, that's Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. in the Kennedy Room. If you can't make it in person, you'll definitely be able to watch it online. And please let me know if you have any questions about that. Thank you all for being here again, and I will yield my time.
Thank you. Alderwoman Saulnier.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to first start by just thanking everyone for coming out tonight. It is a packed room, and I know there are folks in other rooms, and just want to enforce that this is what we need consistently. We're not taking a vote tonight, so that won't happen. We're going to continue to have this discussion, and it's really important that you all's voices are a part of this process. So I want to thank you for being here tonight, and just want to let you know that this is the first meeting, but not the last meeting, and I hope we can, keep the momentum because it's important to hear from you all. And then I really want to thank the planning commissioner and commissioners members and the staff. I know that you guys have been doing some grueling work, and that this is really sort of a brand new industry in many ways, especially to the scale that we are seeing them. And I have enjoyed getting to have conversations with you all and really dig into this and figure this out. And I really appreciate you all's proposal, breaking these things down the way some of you have. I'm really grateful that our meeting is already in the evening so that the public can come and we didn't have to, make that pivot. I would just say, maybe perhaps in the future, perhaps if we're going to bring this topic up again, seeing some of the public engagement tonight, maybe we should think of a venue change that gives us more capacity so that more members of the public can be in the immediate room. I suspected we would have excellent feedback, but I think this shows us that this is here. And so I think that's something maybe we can talk about. We've done it before for some of the neighborhood plans. We went to community spaces. So I think we should consider that again. And I'm not going to really give too much commentary. I just do want to just kind of echo Alderwoman Schweitzer's point that I know that there are some things that members of the public want that are really not the place for zoning regulations, but I think absolutely are the place for ordinance legislation, for legislation and conversations in that matter. So I hope some of what we can accomplish tonight is just kind of clearing up some of those differences in what makes sense as zoning regulations and what might make more sense as, ordinances and other things. I know that myself and many of my colleagues know that the public has very strong feelings and a lot of thoughts. And we know that this is going to be an ongoing conversation. So with that, I will just yield my time. And again, thank all of you all for being here and thank everyone for the work we've put in to get us here.
Commissioner Garmendia.
Just a quick question about the survey. Commissioners didn't receive that. So how was the survey promoted?
Let's see, it was anywhere somebody could read the recommendations, they could click on and fill out the survey.
Okay, so it was with the framework?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's going to remain, we're going to reopen that, maybe reformat some of the questions, they make sense, but that's going to be reopened so people can take them between now and March.
Yes, it's going to remain open.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that was my only question, but a quick comment is just, again, seconding that. I really appreciate the presentation, especially laying out what will be the purview of the zoning ordinance that the planning commission is responsible for approving versus all the other legislation that would need to be created to really protect residents in the way that we've heard is wanted, and that members of the board, like Alderwoman Sonia has mentioned, have been already thinking about that, but it would be preemptive to begin talking publicly about that legislation when the first question is, should we allow data centers in our community? And that's a zoning question. That's one of the few really protected local powers we have is zoning as a local government. So it's definitely a first question we have to answer first and do it well. I think Ameren coming out with their large load regulations made it a lot more clear what, it would be impossible to come up with zoning regulations without knowing the energy impact. So I'm glad that they came up with something and that's clear, but there's just, I really appreciate people giving us time to sit with these recommendations for planning staff to be able to process community feedback and all the expertise that our community members bring. So thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
Okay, sorry. I too want to yield my time. Before I do that, just thank the planning department staff for putting together the report. I thought it was very thorough and it sets us in the right direction in having this very important conversation publicly for the entire city. I am very interested in what the public has to say, so I want to reserve my questions and comments. So thank you, and I yield my time.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Really impressed with the research done by the staff and the presentation here today. A couple of quick questions. The cool roof situation, would that bar having solar on those roofs, or would that be possible still?
That's a great question. I would say, however we define it, should be in a way that doesn't bar the potential for on-site solar generation or other renewable generation. I will say, of course, on-site renewable generation has value no matter the scale, but it on its own is kind of, I'll say, can't come close to meeting the power demand of a data center.
Okay. And then I appreciate the willing to serve letter requirement from the utilities, but I wonder if there is any sort of time limit on how long a backup generator could run, or if that's something we could insert, if that's something that's done elsewhere.
That's a great comment. Yeah,
Right, that's all.
we can, and I think we should.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Fowler.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, staff, for all the hard work. I know this was an easy topic. You had to do a lot of research, and there was a lot of time spent. I think we all appreciate that. A couple things, great presentation. A lot of the things like the maps of showing where the high capacity transmission lines and how those overlap with the industrial areas and kind of the heavier commercial uses really is helpful. There's a map up there that also showed how that 300-foot distance away from residential or A through, forget the letter, but those residential areas kind of pinpoint where data centers could be. So that was very helpful for myself. Also, you did talk about how kind of banning this isn't really the best thing, because there's also data centers that are small in size that we use that you might not think of. I think a lot of the concerns everybody has are the big data centers. Well, we have other data centers that are useful and also generate other, jobs in the area, in the region. So thanks for making those clarifications. Kind of the last thing I'll say is I was happy that you also pointed out that things like developer agreements, benefit agreements, and I call them impact fees also are kind of outside of our purview. And maybe clarify if I'm wrong, but that's something that we really don't have control over here as a commission or PDA staff. So if maybe you can provide some clarification on that.
Yeah, it's something we are actively working on. It's I think, intense legal question. We've noticed examples of cities in other communities starting to tie agreements of that kind into their zoning ordinance. There's no real precedent for that in the state of Missouri, where our kind of zoning authority is derived from, but that's something we're actively researching to see. I think the agreements themselves must be outside of zoning, but if we can connect the two, I think really that creates some predictability and clarity in the process, should we be using that tool in addition to zoning.
I think if we do use that tool, I've seen other communities, and we can talk about this, that have used that, and it's a way for both the community and the developer to kind of use as a tool to come to a happy medium. The community gets benefits. Say it's in an area that needs road improvements, there could be fees that could be paid, et cetera, or they could be kind of required to put in improvements. So something we should kind of look into. And I think that's about it. So thanks, guys. I'll yield my time.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubman.
Thanks. I'd just like to start by saying, the main concern about these seems to be about their impact on the communities. And so I very much appreciate you breaking the impact down by scale of these things, because they come in different, there's a range. And then clearly articulating what areas of the city, even what parcels are potentially affected by those various scales, really very helpful. Very rigorous process. Thank you. I was wondering about, the impact, and we just adopted a sustainability code recently. Is there a way to kind of track the impact I know it's difficult to project and model what the likely impact would be given the lack of transparency with a lot of these developments. And I get all of that, but is there a way to kind of tie the relative impact to these proposed developments with the incremental gains of the sustainability goals and performance over time? Is that something that you're thinking about?
That's something that we're looking into because really the energy usage is something that we can't really control, right? The building envelope design can be as great as possible. The data center can be as efficient as it is, but it's still using an exponential amount of energy. So either we need to figure out how to encourage more renewable energy or lower the energy demand overall, either through, different options like suggested the peak performance type system, or even for residents, like how can we incorporate more renewable energy or reduce our energy burden to kind of like reduce the negative impacts.
Thanks.
Just quickly to add on that, and this would be outside of zoning, but tied into zoning, is the idea of adding data centers into the city's energy and water monitoring, or what's called benchmarking, though there's not so much to benchmark or compare. They're also different. But the intent of that would be to track the water, the energy, and I believe the sources for energy, the energy mix. Because even if a data center falls into a given type, even if they have a maximum power demand agreement set with Ameren, they may for years not kind of expand their capacity up to that limit. So knowing the actual energy and water use, I think will help. It'll also help us refine the requirements. And if we move forward with renewable energy standards, that's really necessary for tracking compliance.
No, that's great. It actually led me to my second question. Given kind of the gold rush nature of this industry at the moment, and that just the intensity of investments and the intense pace of innovation, is there a thought that, periodically or maybe episodically, depending on changes in technology or whatever, to kind of would trigger a review or an adjustment of this? I like the fact that it's in one chapter because it makes all that easier to do, right?
Yeah, I think we've recognized that this is something we'll have to keep up with. We haven't talked about a set interval or kind of time period at which we do a review. But I think that's worth thinking about, kind of an automatic trigger for a review or update.
Right.
And I'll also, I think I kind of skimmed over this, but especially for the public's knowledge, we are parallel to all of this, kind of also comprehensively updating our city's zoning code. All of this ultimately would have to be integrated into that, which creates right there sort of immediate opportunity for refinement. And I think the new code hopefully will give us more and better tools to strengthen even what we're trying to achieve here.
Right. I can see in the near future impacts maybe going up or going down and being able to respond. Thanks. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. Thank you. I do agree that it's sort of a gold rush mentality that's kind of taken over our country, but I got a couple of questions about this. One is taxation. You mentioned property tax abatement was covered in here. Are the current data centers abated in development plans, or some of them are and some of them aren't?
I don't believe any data centers are currently abated.
Okay.
The one tax incentive program they do have access to is at the state level, the state sales tax exemption, and that applies to both state sales tax and local sales tax, but that was a decision of the state.
So you mentioned that there'll be a significant continuous upgrades of these facilities. So from a tax standpoint, I think I'd like to hear a little bit more about how that will impact the city as they upgrade. Are we tracking that? And I know that's not development, but it is tracked by the city. And if it is a revenue generator, we need to look at all sources of revenue. The utility tax would be significant income to the city. So I kind of think we need to do a little bit more in terms of the fiscal analysis of what the benefit is to the city.
We can work on that for the next discussion. We'll come back with more information.
Okay. The other point I had was about market analysis. The developers that are looking to build these and even the end users, were they a part of the stakeholder discussions?
We did interact during a tour with the developer and who's doing co-location data centers across the country and quizzed him extensively with the time we had. Was very appreciative of his willingness to open up his facility to a tour. And we met with a sales representative of another kind of national data center company, also doing mainly co-location. So we're able to get a sense of the market from them. I think additional feedback from kind of people from that perspective would help understand the kind of sensitivity, the relative interest, and how, you know, the right way to design our regulations. We have spoken with a couple of economic development organizations in the region that are, I think, could help us get better information from that perspective.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more of that included as we go forward. Yeah, that would be helpful. The last thing is about Ameren. And I know they're going to appear in a meeting next week, but their rate base, I mean, Jefferson County Data Center or St. Charles County Data Center, those are not, they impact all Ameren customers. I mean, so whether it's in St. Louis or in Jefferson County, to Ameren, it's all in their territory and we all share the burden. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's my understanding. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Boaz.
Hi. I don't have any questions right now. I just want to echo the comments previously about appreciating the public engagement and also very much appreciating staff's work on this. I look forward to hearing from the public.
Thank you. And I'm last but not least, I will just echo the same comments. Thank you to staff for the outstanding work that you've done. Tremendous amount of effort has went into this. Obviously, we want to hear all the comments. So without further ado, we're going to move on to the public hearing section of this meeting. So at this time, I'm going to ask if there's a motion to open the public hearing.
I move to open public hearing.
Second.
Yes, so I have a motion from Commissioner Fowler, a second from Alderwoman Sonier. Can you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Boaz,
Aye.
Chair Bradley,
Aye.
and the motion passes with all present voting aye.
Thank you very much. So let's go over just a few of the ground rules for the public hearing tonight. So we have a very large list, both online and in this room and in the ancillary room. So it's going to be 2 minutes per person. We're going to put the timer up on the screen. We would ask you to please be very respectful of the time so that everyone gets an opportunity to speak. When you come to the microphone, please state your name. And also, if you would state what ward you're from, we would appreciate that as well. We're going to alternate between the people virtually and the people in the room so that, you know, we get a good mix of those comments. And finally, what I would ask you is please, you know, keep your comments not repetitive if at all possible. Again, so everyone gets an opportunity to speak what's on their mind. So staff is going to help me call people up. So James, we'll start with a person online.
Let's first have Opal online.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you're able to hear me? Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to make it quick since we're timed. I didn't know that. I actually called today and I called multiple agencies, which is what I want to also start off with. I called the main number. When you go to find out about this meeting tonight, it wasn't even listed on the government website. And I called and spoke directly with Miriam, I believe your name is today. And Opal is my nickname. I will say that also. But either way, it was not disclosed. And she even verified with me it was not disclosed. I asked if this meeting was disclosed on any social media accounts of the city government, and it was not. And also the city has no link to Instagram on their website. So we know that over 60% of people that are under 35 use Instagram. So I do feel like that there is not transparency in these meetings at all about how to get the information out to people that there are. If there are this many people showing up, we obviously see there's major opposition for this. But I'm not going to go on that anymore, because if I was told I had 2 minutes of a time restriction, I would have prepared my comments much in a simpler way, because I asked what I needed to bring. I was also told by the City Citizens Bureau that we had no meeting tonight. I called the main, then she transferred me to the main alderperson's number. I waited on hold for 30 minutes in the middle of my workday. Then I was told by that operator that there was no meeting tonight. So I was finally forwarded to the president of the alderpersons, who finally had someone call me back to say, oh, there is a meeting tonight. So obviously this is not out there. And also I tried to call in on the phone. And when I did, it said this meeting does not exist. So we have already disenfranchised anyone without internet who could not call in tonight. And so we obviously see that this is not transparency in any fashion. We also see the city just seems to really be promoting it. The two people we've heard from tonight seem to be really basically selling us on this. I was in a meeting last week, and the reason I showed up is because people from the city were at that meeting, and I was told St. Louis wants to be the leader in data centers. So it doesn't sound like our public comments really matter. And why is this not up for a vote? Also, let's point out that Tier Point, when you go to their website, they're the ones who want to create these data centers. At 2300 Locust, they make it already sound like it's in effect. And if you Google who owns Tier Point, it is Apollo Global, who has had their CEO step down, who was recently listed in the Epstein files. So who exactly is going to be profiting from this? And if you look at who is the stakeholders.
Point of order, can we stick to 2 minutes for everyone, to be fair?
Yeah. So that should have been also disclosed today, that there were only two minutes of comment, but we are going to be selling out our city to profit billionaires. And we are already the 30th most polluted city. The American Lung Association has said that we have such issues.
I think we're beyond our 2 minutes. Can you please tell
we
us
have
what
a
ward-
median
what ward you're
income
from?
of $42,000, which clears only $34,000 a year. We have 35,000 uninsured St. Louisans. We're going to sell out our city. I wonder how 300 feet, how close is that to any of your homes? And it just, does St. Louis want to promote that we want to sell out our city to help tax or to help fund billionaires who want their.
Come on.
With respect, we have a lot of other people that are waiting to speak.
Okay, again, I would ask everyone to please be respectful of time so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Can you go on to the next speaker in the room, please?
Next speaker is Tim Brinker in the room.
When you come up or when you give public comment, please don't forget to mention what ward you're from.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tim Brinker, Senior Director of Policy at Greater St. Louis Incorporated. I'm a recovering 17-year alderman of Washington, Missouri, and 12-year county commissioner of Franklin County. So I want to let you know that I really, truly respect your service to this great city that we call St. Louis. First, I want to thank the commission and the city staff for its work on this issue. Greater St. Louis Incorporated appreciates being included by Miriam Keller and Alicia Russell in conversations about their approach. Greater St. Louis is grateful for the effort to identify solutions that take into account the needs of the community and leave the door open to business investment and infrastructure. The framework that's been drafted is a good starting point. It also contains a lot of detail. Greater St. Louis Incorporated appreciates being included once again, and we believe the framework will benefit from a continuing conversation to refine and improve some elements. I want to cite just a few of the refinements we believe would be valuable. For one, the framework should aim for greater definitional clarity, that definitions included for data centers and closed loop systems, to name a couple, would benefit from revision. Also, further work should be done on crafting renewable energy standards, especially for data centers larger than 75 megawatts. Including targets for energy sustainability is a worthy goal. But the standards created must take into account the reality of the energy sources which serve our region. Finally, a closer consideration should be made of the site design and separation requirements included in the framework. While the framework is intended to create more certainty for developers about where they can build, some of the buffer language included in the draft may actually cause more confusion about what sites are appropriate for development. As appropriate, we will submit written feedback that shares a comprehensive list of our suggestions. We look forward to working with you and the city staff on continuing to shape this framework. With collaboration, we can create zoning with important guardrails that also allow for billions of investment in our great city. Thank you very much once again. Greater St. Louis Incorporated is at 1 Metropolitan Square in the 8th Ward. That's who I represent, ma'am. Thank you for your question.
Next online is Margaret, and if Ryan in the room would like to prepare after Margaret.
Hello, I'm submitting my question as a written comment in just about 2 seconds. Thank you. Okay, I'm submitting. Are you able to see that? I'll read it out loud. My comment is that this issue, the data center, needs to be put to a vote of the public. And my second question is, what entity is in charge of putting this on a ballot? How do we go about that? Thank you.
Ryan, pardon me, can't read your list.
All right. Hi, my name is Ryan Diebel. I live in Woodson Terrace, but I do work in the city. I am a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. All right, to the question, should we allow data centers in our community? Flatly, no. Absolutely nothing good will come of this data center for the average working person of St. Louis. The data center will use enormous amounts of water, produce significant noise pollution, and AI will be used to automate a huge number of jobs. Many people will lose their jobs as a result of this data center going up, as the presenters have admitted. But the developers make a buck, so who cares? We do not know the end user of this data center, so it is possible that ICE will use this data center to store surveillance data, which they will use to terrorize us, more effectively. Not only that, but this data center will put enormous power strain on the St. Louis power grid, and as a result, Ameren will increase electricity rates and utility rates in general will rise. Because I don't believe for a second that developers will cover this cost. Many people already have been cut off or been made to pay ridiculous rates after tornado on May 16th, and a data center will only make it worse. We demand a moratorium on all data centers, or at the very least, you must refuse to look over any proposals until the zoning codes are updated, put strict regulations on water usage and power usage, and refuse to let proposals go through with by right zoning. All data centers must be subject to conditional use hearing. Do right by the people. All right, thank you for your time.
Next up online is Emily White, and next in the room is Adrian Cosby, pardon me. Emily White. Emily White. Adrian Cosby, if you're in the room.
Ward 7, Adrian Cosby. Well, here we are all back again, despite the fact that the people of St. Louis have already spoken on this issue and are not in favor of data centers in St. Louis. I feel a little bit manipulated, and I don't trust the city to actually regulate this when we've already said no and are once again being pushed to accept something we don't want. This is the last place I'd like to be after a long day working, but I'm here for my dad. He unexpectedly passed away a month ago, and he would want me here. He was a skilled tradesman and small business owner in St. Louis for 40 years. He, like me, was in opposition to data centers and AI. The only regulations I support of data centers is regulating them out of existence. We can say we want to get our foot in the door with this new technology, but we should be asking why we even want to be utilizing a technology at all if it is destroying our planet. This whole planet is entering a global water crisis as we use water faster than it can be replenished, and a large contributor to this issue is data centers and AI. Not only is this technology, St. Charles has implemented a strict moratorium on data centers, and we should too. Data centers leach water, power, create air, water, light, and sound pollution, do not create jobs, raise costs of power already too high, and take up space that should be used for community development, not unreliable technology like AI. Not to mention, if it's an AI data center, AI itself steals jobs and is used for mass surveillance and control, which is something we could all use a lot less of. We need to allocate our resources to other things like the people of North City who are still recovering from the tornado in May, also to better public transport, housing for our homeless populations, green spaces, and more. When we look around the country and see water and air being sucked up and poisoned by data centers, the answer should be obvious. St. Louis would be better off without them. Thank you.
Emily White online, are you there? Next up in the room is Michael Berg.
Are we going for Emily White first or?
Okay.
She's not here. Okay. So my name is Michael Berg. I live in the 6th Ward and I am part of the party of no. AI is, I mean, if you look at the hype, so let's look at the broader level. We should not be part of creating the infrastructure that could literally destroy humanity. You've got a lot of people a lot smarter than me who've been involved in the building of AI, who said, yeah, this could end humanity. Short of ending humanity, we know that like it's produces a situation where people can't tell the difference of what's real and what's fiction, can decay our ability to recognize what is and is not. It's up there with people who know these things, the two other largest threats of climate change and nuclear war, and it can exacerbate the threat of those two things. So that's the worst case scenario. But if the people who say they're investing in this, if it comes true, what they say is going to come true, looking massive losses of jobs without anything done to see what we're all going to do if we can't work. So that's if the hype comes through. If it doesn't come through, we've done this massive overbuilding, especially overbuilding for Ameren Power, which we're in an administration now. Let's be honest. The person running the presidency of the United States is a immoral psychopath of the highest order who's put in office with the money of tech oligarchs who are also psychopaths and caught up. I didn't think this would be possible in an actual pedophilia ring. Like, these are the people who are making the top level decisions. And do we want to put the infrastructure to destroy us? And people, you talk about we have to prepare for an evolving economy. Evolving for what? If it collapses, we're put on the ground what doesn't need. If it evolves the way they want, it's going to be very bad. We have to stop this and fight it. And the proper level is the local level. We have to join people in Festus and St. Charles and Montgomery City, in Warrenton, other places, say no at the local level. We can't trust the corruption that's going on in Jefferson City. We can't trust the corruption that's going on in Washington. We have to fight for our future by saying no, right now, right here. And that's the broad level purpose. So we have to put a halt to this if we're going to save ourselves. So please put a moratorium until we can make sense of what's going on.
Next up online is Stephen Begany.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity to comment on two issues involving data center impacts on downtown. I'm a resident of the 9th Ward and I work downtown. I'm concerned with the recommendation that downtown buildings would be exempt from most restrictions with just a conditional use permit. Data centers are among the worst uses of land downtown or in downtown west. It's low density that actually extracts vitality out of downtown, even if there's a requirement for street level retail. And we know what this looks like because it's equivalent to our downtown parking garages that have abundant ground floor retail that they already can't fill. And the reason they can't fill it is because downtown lacks the density to support it. So take the Keener Plaza garages as an example, or the city's garage at 7th and Pine. These are turnkey retail spaces in these garages that have been vacant for years. No one wants them because the air above them is mostly empty and there isn't enough support within the neighborhood and not enough external visitors. I work downtown, so I walk past these empty retail spaces every day. Data centers would make this problem worse downtown under the current proposal. It would compound our retail problem by requiring more street retail in these data centers, competing with the spaces that are already unfilled, but the data centers aren't carrying their weight in adding any meaningful density to fill the retail spaces. We see this with the Neutrality building on Tucker. It doesn't have any street retail, but the Park Pacific garage across the street has had vacant retail for 15 years. So the street level activity is already too lacking. The other concern is that data centers would be competing with better downtown uses that we want and need, which could actually restore vitality. I think we can assume that big money behind data centers will always be able to outbid a residential developer and might even want to convert aging residential units into data centers rather than renovating them to maintain the residential base. So none of this is in the city's best interest because these are low density dead spots in the city. Thank you for the chance to comment.
Next up in the room is Tom Bradford. Oh, pardon me, Brayford.
Hi, I'm Tom Brayford. I live in the eastern part of the Central West End, Michael Browning's ward. I forget what ward it is. Used to be the 18th.
The 9th Ward.
9th Ward, yeah, that's it. My company, Irresistible Community Builders, we see that maybe data centers aren't the best thing that ever happened, but they're here, and I think they're probably here to stay. And the biggest issue seems to be around scale. And we're out to create some climate solution communities that are optimized, and we think it would be helpful to have a very small data center. And I think the report was really done well and had a lot of good information. And I think the idea with the zoning, there's some good sense behind that. But I got concerned when I got to the point about no data centers in anywhere near a residential area. And I'm a developer that's out to create these communities that are a solution for climate change, that create all our energy on site, grow food on site, capture the water that falls on the site, and we think we can make that work a lot better if we have a very small data center. And so I'd like to have a conversation with somebody to see if maybe we could have another a nano scale data center that's an eighth to a quarter the size of a micro data center. And I think that would bring help out all the neighborhoods where we build these communities. Thank you.
Next up online, Mary Ellen Parmenter. And next up in the room is Elise Schaefer, if you want to prepare.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, my name's Mary Ellen Parmenter. I'm so sorry, I actually don't know my ward, but I'm on Eichelberger Street near Southampton neighborhood, if that helps. I wanted to thank y'all for the opportunity to comment and thank the Planning and Urban Design Committee for their very informative presentation. One thing that has really impacted me and my finances and my ability to contribute to St. Louis's economy is high energy costs, particularly related to the heat wave last summer. It caused me to have, as one of multiple reasons I've downsized apartments and stopped spending as much money in our economy. And I'm concerned about the data center's impact on my rates. And as well, the data center's impact on the climate could contribute down the road to more extreme weather events, creating a vicious cycle of higher bills for me. And it's bad for our community. The more bills people have, the less they invest in our community. I wanted to speak specifically to large load data centers. As someone who uses cloud storage, I acknowledge that data storage is a necessity in our community, but I see no reasonable use for large load data centers besides generative AI, and I think that it's harmful to our community. There seems to be this mentality of someone's going to build it, so it might as well be us. They even, in the presentation, it was acknowledged rightfully so that job displacement by AI is going to happen regardless. But I feel like that's a losing thought pattern, that we might as well be the ones to do it. Just because this movement is happening towards AI and towards these large load data centers does not mean we have to help. And so I'm calling for no by right zoning of data centers of any kind, and for a pause on conditional use hearings and appointments until we can create all these regulations and publish the full change zoning regulations in the fall. Also, density restrictions to keep clusters of data centers from developing, and also to limit tax abatements. These companies are going to make a lot of money. They do not need our help with tax abatements. Thank you so much.
Please.
Good evening. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak. My name is Elise Schaefer. I'm a proud 6th Ward resident, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Missouri Coalition for the Environment, or MCE. MCE is a legislative advocacy organization handling environmental issues that impact people, and you better bet that includes data centers. I would first like to applaud the planning and sustainability departments for, in particular, their awareness of the gravity of these impacts, not just because you made my job quite easy tonight by clearly outlining the careful need for consideration of water use, energy sources, and noise considerations, but because I do think the draft regulations you've put forth are a great start. MCE stands by the Planning and Urban Design Agency's September recommendation that no data center projects advance until thoughtful regulations are officially put in place. MCE also supports the recommendation that no data centers over 5 megawatts be allowed by right in any part of the city. In the meantime, I am here to advocate for 4 changes in the name of comprehensive environmental protections to the recommendations. First, more aggressive renewable energy requirements could be put in place. Data centers of all sizes will actually benefit from using renewable energy, since it is the cheapest and fastest to deploy source of energy on the market and is the only form of energy not subject to volatile fuel pricing. Thus, it will result in more stable electricity costs. Additionally, renewables are the only energy source that will not emit greenhouse gases during use, and data centers need a livable planet to operate on as well. Second, data centers of all sizes should be required to disclose e-waste management plans. End of building life decommissioning is vital. We were very glad to see it included in the recommendations, but the reality is that data centers replace their equipment every 3 to 5 years, as acknowledged in the presentation. So MCE wants to be certain that their waste is properly recycled in the city, a challenge, and that the company has a publicly available plan in place to do so before they've been approved to operate in our community. Third, we want to be sure that the next draft includes provisions preventing the interconnection of multiple closely sited data centers that were approved under less strict standards. This could include further disclosure agreements or setbacks based on distance from other data centers. And finally, I'll just say Residents need to be given real power over determining whether or not any projects continue, as well as be invited to the table to determine what community benefits look like. And that might or might not end up being appropriate in the conditional use hearing, but residents need to be given real power over these. Thank you so much.
Next up online, Cecilia Dvorak.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, thanks. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Cecilia Dvorak of Steadfast City. Our office is in Ward 2. In full transparency, I do represent a developer that is working on a project right now that's under review by the executive order. But that said, my comments are really focused more on the more broad ordinance and how it might affect the city at large. So first, just want to say thank you to the planning staff and the commission on allowing us to speak to this. It's very clear that there's been a very good balanced approach to the regulations that are being proposed, and it's a very complex land issue that is consistently evolving. And it shows the sophistication of the staff at large. So 2 brief points that I would love to touch on that I'm more familiar with is the community engagements and the definitions piece. On community engagement, it is amazing that the community engagement piece is in here, and it's a strong commitment to transparency for the community. Because this would be the first time that the zoning code mandates an applicant-led engagement in this way, it would be super helpful to have guidance on the scope, timing, documentation, and how that feedback is actually incorporated or should be incorporated into the projects that are being reviewed. And then additionally, that would provide some standardization on expectations that'll help ensure that the engagement is meaningful, equitable, and predictable for both the neighborhood and the neighborhoods as well as the applicants. The second piece that I would love to just touch on is the definitions. The definition of data center and facility on the proposed regulations could be refined to just more clearly distinguish a principal use versus an infrastructure scale development versus an accessory use, such as a server room within a hospital or an office building. Without that distinction, those 2 things can be difficult, and things like hospitals and other office users could be negatively impacted. So appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for your consideration.
Next up in the room, Mikkel Snyder.
Good evening. My name is Mikkel Snyder. I'm a technical writer based out in the county. However, I'm also a board member of the St. Louis Independent Comics Expo, a nonprofit dedicated to free arts education within the city proper. I've been uniquely positioned over the last 4 years to see firsthand how tech companies have attempted to incorporate large language models and generative AI into every conceivable facet of modern society, and I've watched as artists and writers have had their work stolen to feed data into such models. As the technology has gotten better over the years, a modern chatbot still has a non-trivial probability of being wrong, and there are still shockingly few safeguards in place, as seen with Grok mass-producing deepfake images and an increasingly number of cases of AI-induced psychosis. However, the supposed potential of these models to solve vaguely defined problems has resulted in a technological arms race where companies are trying to make as many of these data centers as they can, despite the damage they cause. We can look at Memphis, Chicago, Indianapolis to see the devastating short-term consequences between undrinkable water, degraded air quality, noise pollution, and rising utility costs. And all of this is in the name of an industry that has not actually made a profit yet, is not likely to, and is still somehow responsible for mass layoffs today and threatens even more jobs in the future because higher-ups think a glorified autocomplete can replace people. Based on my experience and research, LMMs and Gen AI are unlawful, unethical, unsustainable, and also just bad. And any of these should have been disqualifying, and all of them together should be damning. But Pandora's box is open, and while I personally refuse to believe that this tech will inevitably become part of our future, I agree with the Planning Commission. St. Louis is in a unique position to provide a deliberate and comprehensive plan to protect its citizens from the modern-day equivalent of a combination asbestos snake oil factory. My ask tonight is simple. Until we have fully comprehensive and modernized zoning codes that reflect the impact of data centers, we need to stop the delay in scheduling of any conditional use hearings for data centers going forward. It doesn't make sense to piecemeal these things when we can all agree we need these rules going forward. Thank you.
Next up online, Deanna Simon.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I just basically wanted to say that I have seen the effects of St. Louis grabbing at like short-term money at the expense of long-term goals for the people, and just the fact that that's led us into so many of our situations that we're currently in, where we're struggling to try and keep up with the rest of the places because we keep just chasing money that is not really for us. Like this money is not going to stay in the community. The $3 billion investment is not really $3 billion that's going to go back into St. Louis. The $32 million for the school district is great, but that's such a small fraction of what the $3 billion actually is. And in reality, the damage that it's going to do long term is way more than $32 million. It's way more than any of the money that we could even fathom right now, and it's way more that we have at a city. This is really only supporting big businesses, people who already have a ton of money. It's going to harm everybody else who works and lives in St. Louis, and it's going to make it so much worse than it already is. There's so many great aspects of St. Louis. There's so many ways that it's been rebounding and coming back and just being a better place for people to live and work, and you want to nurture that. Data centers are not how you nurture that. That's how you destroy that. I worked very close to where this data center would be proposed, the WashU Med campus. I don't really understand how you expect for these large data centers with air, noise, and visual pollution, why people would want to be in that area. Like the idea of, oh, well, we can put businesses on the first floor of these buildings and have people that are still there so that we're utilizing more of this space, as if people are going to want to be near these super noisy, super emittive, super unpleasant places in the first place. That's just doing more damage to anybody who would be there. That's unhealthy for the people who would be in those areas anyway. So it's unhealthy in all regards.
What ward are you from?
Sorry, I live in Overland, Missouri, but I work in St. Louis and I spend most of my time in St. Louis. I don't know what ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up in the room, Jim Stites.
Hello, I live in the second ward, and I wish to emphasize more particularly the climate implications of these data centers. Over the past half decade or so, they have helped to bend the curve back upward in the wrong direction. They have thrown a lifeline to the fossil fuel industry. And because of these data centers, combined with a federal government that adamantly insists the earth is flat and there is no climate change, we're now facing an increasing likelihood of severe high projection climate change, where summers in St. Louis are unlivable. Summer baseball will be out of the question. We don't want that for our children. So I submit that we have an ethical obligation that if any developer really super duper wants to set up shop here, they should be required to construct or contract for not just their consumption, but multiple times that, and then remit to the city all of their rebates from reverse metering. If they really want to set up shop here and they have more money than God, as they do, this should be trivial for them. On the other hand, if this is too great a bridge to cross, then losing out on a data center in the process of upholding ethical principles is not the worst thing in the world in the big scheme of things. Now, there is a temptation for every individual city to say, you know, if there's no correlation between the location of the data center and the people who die in climate catastrophes, or the people whose brains are rotted by AI, you know, the children who don't do their homework, the men who get synthetic girlfriends, the White House that posts fake pictures of their enemies, et cetera, and all these benefits. But just because all the other cool kids are doing it, I submit, was not a valid excuse when we were young. They're not a valid excuse when we're old. We have more integrity than that, and we should demand the highest standards, demand that developers at least help solve one existential problem in the process of setting up shop in St. Louis if they're going to contribute to another. Thanks.
Next up online, Ben Wolf.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just have a couple points. I'm not going to belabor some of these larger points that people have made. I share the same concerns about the larger issues of AI data centers specifically, but I think on a more local level, my concern is around the proposed construction of data centers in residential areas. I know that's something that we discussed, but based on research from WashU and St. Louis, the communities that are most likely to feel the negative impacts of these are Black communities, namely the concern I think is with North St. Louis. People who've been affected by the tornado in May we have people who are still living on the street as a result of the city's lack of action there. I definitely see empty parcels of land that have been decimated by that destruction looking very attractive to developers. So I do think that there needs to be some sort of restrictions around the capabilities of building in communities that are the most at risk. I'd also like to point out, I know that there was research done with cities in the United States. There are many cities across the globe who have put moratoriums on the building of data centers. There are cities in Spain, Ireland, the Netherlands that are not allowing the construction of data centers. I think that we could be looking to these as examples of how we should be moving forward with these zoning restrictions. Another city in the United States itself is New Orleans, Louisiana. Just this year passed a moratorium on the construction of new data centers while they figure out their own zoning regulations for 1 full year. I don't really see why we couldn't be doing something similar here in St. Louis. I think the largest point I'd like to make, though, is we keep hearing about the need to grow the economy of St. Louis, and we keep hearing how data centers are integral to that. For some reason, I disagree with that. I think that if anybody is telling us that we need these to grow the region, it's a lack of vision and a lack of imagination. I think that there are many other ways that we can do that here in St. Louis, and it's frankly a disservice to say otherwise. So that's my thoughts. Thank you very much. And I'm in the 6th ward.
Chair, that's the end of the commentaries from online, so we're going to continue within the room. Next up is Lindsay Holman.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Holman. I'm from St. Louis County. Thank you for trying to make some of this framework to start. So I think that there needs to be an environmental impact report and a health impact assessment by an independent consultant with third-party review or with regulatory oversight that is an independent entity. These pollutants travel hundreds of miles. St. Louis is already a heat island. Why couldn't we require them to put solar panels over all of the parking lots in St. Louis? Why couldn't that be an idea? I just don't believe that me, my family, and my health, and my neighbor's health should be compromised and my bills be higher because of someone else's profit, including the city's. You mentioned school upgrades, but how much of a benefit is that if the children are having problems breathing? I just don't understand the long-term effects of this and how it makes any sense. Thank you.
Carrie McCullen.
Hello, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Carrie McCullen. I live in Ward 2. What is the cost of human life? What about the cost of our air, water, land? Kara Spencer wants to send a message to developers in the business community that we are open for business. We are told we don't want to lose out on benefits. But what sort of message does regulating, normalizing, and allowing a dumpster fire, which is what I'm now calling AI data centers, send to city residents, even if there are benefits? Do the benefits outweigh the costs? These regulations, a paper tiger, would still allow AI data centers / dumpster fires to be built. How is that helping? You can't regulate a dumpster fire. This isn't our first taste of dumpster fires either in St. Louis, creating hazard waste while harming and killing lives. Look at Coldwater Creek, for example. after this AI boom, which is a part of Trump's strategic AI plan, how much time do we have before a single AI data center dumpster fire sucks up all our resources, poisons us with toxicity, and skyrockets our utilities, making it uninhabitable to even live here? Kara Spencer wants a vibrant city that's open for business. She doesn't want to scare off development. You all unanimously voted for a moratorium in September before Spencer's executive order. You took a stand then and helped set a precedent, and you can take a stand again. These regulations are a false choice when the people have made it clear that we don't want AI dumpster fire regulations at all. We want a ban. Please go back to the drawing board, actually introduce a complete and total ban of at least 10 years on all AI data centers. Send a message to constituents that you care about them. Please act with courage and be brave. You can do the right thing for the people and the planet, not what's right for development with NDAs and shady deals with unknown end users. And Kara Spencer, who will likely be a one-term mayor, blah, blah, blah. She sold the residents of North and West St. Louis out in the cold to dry, especially after the tornado, losing their limbs and lives on the streets in the winter. You're either with us or against us. Which side are you on? Thank you.
Danny Kahn.
Hello, I am Danny Kahn from Ward 2. But for the sake of this 2 minutes here, let's pretend that I'm Peter Thiel, the CEO of Palantir, TikTok, and Oracle, and other AI and data center consumers. So my first question is, will I be able to propose a data center without anyone in power or the community to know that I am the end user since I have an NDA with the developer? Yes or no answers? Anyone? I'm going to take that negatively. Next question. Will I be able to use my data center to aggregate HIPAA-protected health data and use it to train AI and sell it to other entities? Yeah, I thought probably yes on that one too. Will these regulations are they going to keep me from aggregating surveillance data in St. Louis facilities? And will I be able to sell those surveillance data and HIPAA data to ICE under these regulations? What I thought. Unless I'm hearing otherwise from anyone, I'm going to take that as my answer here. And will I have to report what I use my data center for in the first place at all? Do I have to report the use under these regulations whatsoever? Can I get any yes or no answer? That's it.
Zero Densing.
Hi, I'm a Hazelwood resident and I work in St. Louis County. I'm a union iron worker with our local 396. Like many others, we are struggling. My closest friends have had to choose between life-saving surgery and paying their rent, and now they live with their parents. My mother cannot afford the utilities on her own with 5 young children to care for. I cannot afford to move out on my income alone. All of this is because of the rising cost of food, of utilities, and of living. We are familiar with the crisis of cost of living, and these data centers only make it worse. Residential bills have risen 6% nationwide from August 24 to August of 25, and electricity in states with established data centers cost as much as 267% more than they did 5 years ago. About 2/3 of power nationwide is supplied off of regional or statewide networks, which passes commodity costs of these data centers onto households, onto our businesses, and onto our community. And this is something we simply can't afford. Given how Ameren services both the city and the county, data centers would have a drastic impact on me and my loved ones' ability to pay already rising utility costs. So I am insisting that the Planning Commission officially recommend that the Board of Alders do not process any new applications and does not schedule any conditional use hearings on data centers until comprehensive zoning updates are made in the fall. Also, we insist that data centers of all sizes do not receive by right zoning. We want to leave no room for developers to circumnavigate the law, as well as consider how automation via AI will change the lives of our citizens. Data centers not only pollute our neighborhoods and raise the cost of living, it'll also automate our jobs and jeopardize the ability for our community to provide for our families. Thank you.
Jonathan Chang Almeida.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Chang Almeida. I'm from Hazelwood, Ward 6. At the moment, I'm just going to go ahead and attack generative AI. There's been a lot of money poured into it, but no profit. A really easy example is OpenAI that has a $1.4 trillion spending commitment. I think it's also easy to say that generative AI is what's driving data centers at the moment. If you look at the Super Bowl and all the commercials that happened, a good chunk of them were all just Gen AI. NVIDIA and OpenAI have been pouring money into each other. So NVIDIA promised to send them RAM. And if you look at RAM prices right now, they've skyrocketed over the last couple months. And OpenAI has been saying that they're going to spend money on NVIDIA, so keeping it a closed loop circle. I also worry about the mental health of the people who use AI. We have examples like Zane Shambling in Los Angeles, who took his life assisted with AI, and Sewell Garcia in Florida, who were both for months talking to Gen AI and being locked in a system where it's pulling them in and not letting them go away. It's keeping them there to have someone to talk to them. Zane Shambling's case was because of Google Gemini 4 with OpenAI. They wanted to skip ChatGPT's safety testing to try to keep up with it, which led to what happened. I would also like to demand no by right zoning. I don't think we should be doing anything with the data centers as long as the community of St. Louis feels so strongly about them. And I don't think that we should process any new zoning updates. Well, no more data center updates until the new zoning in the fall. Thank you so much.
Julia Hughes.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Julia. I'm from Ward 7. As we saw tonight, data centers require an immense amount of electricity and water for cooling, which raises my concerns, as many of my neighbors, about the cost of our utilities going up and the decaying of our aging power grid and infrastructure. How can there be legislation for it to make it better for us? How can we benefit from this? And I'm afraid of this AI bubble popping and us being the ones to pay the price. I want this city to be livable as I age. I want my 74-year-old mom to be able to stay here. I'm having trouble affording my utility bills. I fear that if we don't do something to slow this down or have a moratorium, we will regret what we do in this room, what we do going forward with AI in general. And we need to protect our neighbors. We don't need buildings that are loud, disruptive. We need to protect our neighbors right now. And if we do a moratorium for a year, that would be the best way to do this so that we can be understanding and in solidarity with our most vulnerable populations that would not benefit from this data center at all. Who is the one to benefit from this? Because it's not me and it's not most people in this room, and it may not be any of you. I really want to ask us to think about the 7 generations going forward. We have already hit peak oil, meaning there is only a very finite amount of oil left, a finite amount of energy left on our earth. Everything will change rapidly in the next 40 years. One of the things that we can do is slow down the aggressive use of energy that these data centers require. We will be the ones to pay the price. I beg you, do not do any ability. We need a moratorium at the end of the day, and we need to figure out how this impacts us, period. That's all I'd like to share. Thank you.
Jeremy Alaj.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Alhaj. I'm the executive director of the Missouri Worker Center. We're based in Ward 10. I want to just thank the Planning Commission for the level of community engagement that they conducted and for the thoughtful recommendations that we think they put together. I think one of the things that I was most heartened by was that they wanted to include in the consideration of large data centers the jobs impact and community benefits. The three largest occupations in the city, in the St. Louis MSA, are office work, food service, and transportation, which are all three jobs that are under high risk of automation or de-skilling into lower paid jobs. When we're making considerations about jobs on these projects, I think it would behoove the Planning Commission to think about not just the permanent jobs that are the few permanent jobs that are going to be created and the jobs in construction that are going to be temporary, but also the overall impact on the job market in the city and how that's going to affect residents. If there's widespread job loss, it's going to make it very difficult for people to continue to engage in our local economy. Also, on the community benefits agreements, I think are a net positive. If I'm glad that the Planning Commission wants to see them as part of what they're going to look at in terms of being able to move these projects forward. I think that you should think about minimum standards for those community benefits agreements and what that would mean. In the interim, it does not make sense to move projects forward. I know there's a project that's currently pending. It's interesting that it was introduced just weeks before the Planning Commission's recommendations came out. It doesn't seem right for you to go ahead and put to bring that to a conditional use hearing, given that we are continuing to look at the zoning regulations and that those zoning regulations should not go forward until the comprehensive zoning regulations are produced in the fall. Thank you.
Sean Faust.
Sean Faust. I'm a resident of the First Ward of the city of St. Louis and a SLPS parent. I think I'm the first one up here with that tonight, which is part of what I wanted to come here for. And for a minute there, with all the talk of Palantir, I thought I was in Middle Earth. So if you get the joke, you get it. So anyway, I wanted to thank the commission staff, first of all, for bringing forward a nice framework that we can work with. I don't want anything like I saw at XAI down in Memphis in my city. I don't want it in my metro area. I believe in sensible regulation. I believe in zoning that leads to development that helps our community out, not that makes us into a dumpster fire. That said, I think there are a lot of things in here that do need some work. Definitions, defining a closed loop system. There's more than one way to do that. And I also wanted to warn the commission against overly restrictive zoning, which was mentioned in the report. We have a great opportunity here. I was driving just down from City Hall on Tucker, and at Lafayette, there was another water main break, it looked like, just yesterday. I don't know if that was what it was. I'm imagining it was. We need revenue. This is a revenue opportunity for our city. We have police officers that are looking to get more money. We have city employees looking to get more money. We have SLPS that's talking about closing schools. We need revenue. Almost every big project we have in the city has an abatement or a TIF. A lot of these data centers, they're not looking for that. We need to make sure we have zoning that allows for development of people that are going to come here and not ask for a 20-year tax incremental financing deal. I'm hoping that this commission can work with stakeholders to form a nice framework for sensible data center development. I think this is a good start. I think there's improvements to be made. This is very restrictive, but I am happy that we don't have an XAI Colossus type situation with things like this to protect us. Thank you.
Lewis Hamilton.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Lou Hamilton. I'm a resident of the 8th Ward, live downtown and have for 13 years. I want to first just compliment the Planning Commission for coming up with a pretty good base document. I echo the feelings of a few of the other speakers that it needs some work, needs some kind of dial down on some of the descriptions. But I hear talk about the excessive water use of data centers. If you look at the Post-Dispatch, I think it'll be in tomorrow. It was in the online version this afternoon. The cities had to transfer about $8 million in emergency funds to the water department because they're out of money, and because of the water main breaks and the lack of reinvestment into the water system. Our problem is not that we don't have enough water in the city. The problem is that we can't use enough of it. So we got a system built for 1 million people. We're supporting 240,000, and they can't make that infrastructure work. So I would argue that responsible data centers and the use of water might actually help keep our water rates lower among city residents than they would be otherwise. But those are all things for debate as you narrow this down and get closer to a final document that goes to the Board of Aldermen. I will say, though, with all the naysaying about this is terrible, we shouldn't do this, and let them build it somewhere else, I'm just going to ask you if some of you of a certain age will remember a bar down at Laclede Landing some 35, 40 years ago called Lucius Boomers. It was the namesake of Lucius Boomer, who was an engineer who made his name in St. Louis by saying, "Don't build that bridge across the Mississippi. The railroads will never leave." Well, we didn't build that bridge. The railroads left, and by the time we put the Eads Bridge up, we had lost to Chicago, who was a much smaller city than we were at the time. So, whatever you do, keep up with the thoughtful, detailed, considerate, and reasonable plan that allows us to marshal the technology that's here, whether we like it or not, and do it in a fashion that doesn't leave St. Louis behind. So thank you very much.
Stephen Andrew.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Andrew. I live in Ward 6, Tower Grove South neighborhood. I listened to your proposed regulations tonight, and my first thought was that they are kind of light. I was down in Jefferson County last week at a county council meeting there where they're doing the same thing. They're proposing regulations for data centers, and they are holding the feet of the developers to the fire down in Jefferson County. Specifically, I saw that they have regulations on how much labor, like construction labor, as well as the ongoing staffing of the facility has to come from the community, and it's a large number. We could do that here. I know another one that I saw was that before any concrete gets poured in any data center facilities, they would require that the developer sign some kind of agreement about if the thing ever has to stop operations, if they go bankrupt or whatever, to pay back a large amount of money to the county. I think we should do that here because, as many others have said tonight, this thing is kind of a boondoggle. There's a very good chance that it just goes belly up in the next few years. I'm opposed to them entirely. I don't think we should have them. I think there's no benefit at all. There might be a few jobs building the thing, but ongoing, none. These are big racks of computers that are used to power generative AI, ChatGPT, cryptocurrency mining, nothing that serves any business in the area. They're different than a data storage center for a business here in St. Louis that employs St. Louisans. This is only profiting billionaires in California or wherever else, but not here. Thanks.
Kyle McKenna.
You're good. Yep. Good evening. Thank you for your time. Appreciate all the thought that's gone into it. My name is Kyle McKenna. I'm a city resident, Ward 2. I also represent approximately 150 electrical contractors throughout Eastern Missouri who employ collectively over 5,000 electrical workers. So you can imagine the type of impact that this can have on communities, positive impacts that I think are mostly not are going unnoticed. From a resident's perspective, I really want to see the city thrive, right? I think everyone has that end goal in mind. And I think that with sensible regulation that we're looking at, we can achieve that goal. And then from my professional perspective, I think the recognition of the unique needs here with outdated regulations and warehousing, it's really important that we take this step forward. And not only that, that when we look at it, we're clear on the implementation and the timing of these data centers. So for the remainder of my time, I really want to focus on the framework that is in the proposed structure, which has a multi-department review process and emphasizes early community engagement. I think all parties recognize the value in such, but it's really important that we focus on the details to get it right, because that can have an impact between what's successful and thoughtful in enabling these projects versus inadvertent and unintended impediments. One example that I'd like to highlight is regarding the scheduling of technical review and the conceptual zoning issues like land use and policy direction. When these functions occur in a series where one must be finalized prior to the other beginning and so on and so forth, it places strain on project schedule and the logistics challenges that are there as well. So if you allow that process to proceed concurrently, you'll be much more efficient in the process and be able to help these projects get off the ground. I recognize I'm out of time. We will submit written follow-up and appreciate everyone's efforts.
Jerry Connolly.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I've got a quick question for the audience first. How many of you did not attend a stakeholder meeting in the last 5 months? Did not attend one until today? Anyone else? Okay. How many of you did attend one? So about 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So the folks behind me who just put their arm up heard about a stakeholder meeting and attended it. We've gone 5 months in a process, and so the majority of us are in this room for the first time. It was rare for the Planning Commission to have documents posted a week in advance, which I did appreciate. But if we want authentic transparency, the public has to be engaged. The mayor's executive order back on September 19th specified that there would be community partners, industry experts involved. I'd like to know who were those community partners, where were the meetings held, and who was participating. Greater St. Louis admitted that they were at the table and they appreciated it. Well, I don't appreciate the fact that most of us here weren't at those tables. We're in a building that's going to make a lot of decisions, not just the planning department, but SLDC is going to be involved with agencies that they staff. That entity has a lot to say about facilitating tax incentives, regardless of what the current developer has said with the Midtown Armory District. You know, they can say we're not seeking incentives or we're not seeking incentives at this time, but they can always come back for more. Very often with these TIF presentations, if they are seeking a TIF, for example, you get very little notice. Tomorrow, there are actually going to be 2 hearings by the Port Authority, which are not on the agenda. I believe they're illegal, and tune in at 8 a.m. tomorrow if you want to see them and participate. And the final item is just a clarification that the Tier Point Data Center downtown is in a TIF district. So I don't know how many of the others are, but that one is. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Sylvia Kenny.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Cuny. I moved to Ward 5 20 years ago after completing my degree in mechanical engineering. I have several concerns about how data centers have been treated by municipalities across the entire state. A data center is not simply a warehouse for data. It is an industrial site filled with computers and very few people. Those computers require incredible amounts of electricity and generate incredible amounts of heat. A massive amount of water is then required to cool the computers to prevent them overheating. The massive HVAC systems run 24/7, generating continuous low-frequency sound waves, which have been shown to have detrimental consequences to human health. My concerns are simple. I'm concerned about who will actually pay for the electrical utilities to build more capacity infrastructure to deliver that large electrical load. I don't believe that it should be footed by the citizens of the city. I am concerned about the water demands and infrastructure. The water supply and wastewater lines of St. Louis are like a spider web. Just because the entire network has capacity, that doesn't mean all the extra capacity can be concentrated in one spot. This will lead to even more failures than we already have. Just on my block, there's been a water main leak for 2 full years. I am concerned about the noise pollution and what kind of buffer zones should be required due to the consequences to human health. I am concerned about the owners and end users of the data centers and feel city residents and community leaders should have a voice in what is going into our neighborhoods. For all these reasons, I feel there should not be any by right zoning for data centers. Every single project should be evaluated by its required inputs of electricity and water and its outputs of noise, heat, wastewater, e-waste, and the end users. Also, any project currently being looked at should be paused until these regulations are completed. Thank you.
Abigail Gunther.
Hi, my name is Abigail Gunther, and I live in Ward 7. Hello, Alderwoman Sonier. I moved here about 2 years ago, and I am committed to St. Louis. It is my home and my community. This also means that I am a rare transplant during a time when St. Louis's population is dropping faster than any other city. And I can promise building a data center is not going to help with that. Large load data centers do not create jobs, they steal them away. The number of jobs created after construction is incredibly low, and to make matters even worse, these large hyperscale data centers are used to support AI, which tech billionaires are using to automate jobs. Amazon employs 6,800 people in the St. Louis area, and internal documents show they plan to automate 75% of their operations. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the recommendations, and I think it's a wonderful start, but I do not think it's nearly enough. I want to see community benefit agreements. These tech companies are making record profits, and they want to come into St. Louis and use our wonderful water, pollute our already not so great air, and steal from our already strained electric grid. They want to raise our already high utility bills during a cost of living crisis. They want to automate our jobs and jeopardize our ability to provide for our families. There is no benefit to having a large data center in our community. And if they want to build data centers here, then the absolute very least we can expect is that they invest into our city, our people, and our community so that St. Louis can prosper. I am asking you today to postpone finalizing your recommendations. I want this committee to take their time and finish your recommendations in the fall when the full zoning code is updated. In the meantime, I want you to commit to hearing no new proposals for new data centers. We have been told many times that we absolutely cannot afford to be left behind. But if it's such a great idea, it will be a great idea later this year. Let us take our time and show these tech companies they cannot scare us into making hasty decisions. Thank you.
Melinda Long.
Excuse me. Thank you. Hello. Melinda Long, 11th Ward resident. I am calling, of course, my main concern is why are we here even discussing this? Because if this is a conditional hearing for a type of business that the residents state they don't want anyway. So in summation, an alderperson, for us to even be having this discussion, that means an alderperson, he or she had to have introduced it to the board to have this discussion. That group, is that correct? Okay, well then in summation, why, again, going back to the question, why are we having this anyway? The two parties that initiated the meeting, they had spoke about the square footage, the maximum amount, X, Y, and Z. But again, we know that the data center is not good for the city, is not good for the community at all. I happened to be watching a movie a couple of months ago. Just in that short period of time, I looked up an actor on the movie. I just put in that actor's first name, then automatically everything about that actor came up on my phone and the movie that I was watching. So initially I said, okay, good, hey. But then within a second, I turned my head and said, hey, wait a minute now. How would this phone connected to my television know everything that I was trying to look up? And that scares me. I'm not computer illiterate, so when an individual came up and stated that the Super Bowl commercials were AI generated, that went past me because it looked all legit to me. I was just like, wow, that's a really good commercial. But bottom line, I appeal to you, let's go back to the drawing board. The fact that we're having this hearing, this discussion, it is as if a perpetrator is pushing himself on a potential victim. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to do any harm to you. However, this is good for you. You'll like it. But no. And so the perpetrator, I had to look at it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, panel. I'm looking at you as being the perpetrators because you guys already know. You already know that the residents, the voters don't want it. There are data centers in the county, other places. There are data centers in other municipalities. They said bottom line, they're going to do ordinances, St. Charles just recently, not to put these data centers in the community. We don't want this data center. And a data center that is out there because the advanced technology, they can pull information. They're all interconnected. They can pull information from any other data center around the country. So we need not have it here. I appeal to you. Go back to the drawing board. Don't even go back to the drawing board. Just drop it. And if anything, if you just have to have it, put it on the ballot. And I assure you, this 1% of registered voters here will be nothing compared to the millions, the thousands of people, the thousands of voters that will come to that poll and say, no, we don't want it. Thank you. Thank you.
Dan Pate.
Hi, everybody. Dan Pate, Ward 6. A couple things. Why are we here right now? I think a couple things. Mr. Rowe, I know, was really concerned about an initial data center proposal that was going to use the power, the equivalent to 13,000 homes, and wrote a letter and proposed a moratorium, and that was passed. But the developer wrote a letter to, I think, the mayor's office, and now the moratorium is suddenly off the table. I'm going to compare the regulations for large load data centers to one that's being proposed right now with 120 megawatts. That powers 90,000 to 100,000 homes, 120 megawatts. St. Louis City only has 71,000 single-family detached structures, and that seems high. So something that uses that much power doesn't belong here. It can use more power than there are single-family detached homes in the city. You can't, that's stupid, and you can't regulate stupid. So anything that allows data centers that are that large are regulations that we don't want. Another thing that is happening, like Jerry talked about with the community engagement, already we've seen the usual suspects, Greater St. Louis taking people on junkets to other data centers and things like that. Are you guys going to listen to the many or you listen to the money? That's a big question. We are here because also of decades of mismanagement of the city finances. This is not going to be another ARPA windfall for everyone. We cannot regulate these things well enough to make them not harm our city. So if they should pass, we're all going to remember at the ballot box, the next election that we have, that things happened to us, not for us. Thank you.
Nick Hartzler.
Good evening. My name is Nick Hartzler. I live in the 1st Ward. I work as a senior project manager with Steadfast City in the 7th Ward, and I am representing a project that's proposed for the 11th Ward. Thank you very much for the proposal. I think it's a great framework, that to put the efforts into it as it is today. I just want to bring some of my own experience to help shape it into a better policy. One example is there are several assumptions contained in it that make assumptions to everything being new construction. I think some changes and clarity could be added to it to make designation for when it's an adaptive reuse versus new construction. I think that helps conform with the city's overall goals of reuse of current properties. Also, ultimately, the goal being in having this kind of proper format, it will reduce the use down the road of using the variance process. So I just think that's kind of a good thing to call out. Contained within here, there are some of the strongest pieces in here are about when it specifies performance-based goals versus calls for specific technology. As we've seen with data centers, the technology around them has advanced so quickly and so rapidly that today they what they look like today is very different than what they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So I think it would just be appropriate to look at them and kind of make the requirements based on meeting these goals, which is ultimately at the end, the purpose of these regulations, rather than calling for certain specific technology. It's been 60, 70 years since the zoning code's been updated. I think the recommendation before about having regular updates kind of helps address this matter. Lastly, I just wanted to applaud having these regulations in putting forth a predictable format and also having the executive order in place so that there is a bridge between these two processes. Many of the regulations that are proposed in here can be put into proposals through the conditional use permit hearing. Ultimately, I think this is maintaining that bridge allows us for this rare situation of having a major investment coming into the city of St. Louis without incentives, and this path allows us to really resource the city and the schools. So thank you very much for your time.
Shelby Mohan. Shelby Mohan. Tom Beard. Oh, Tony, I apologize.
Hello, I am Tom Beard. Actually, Tony. It's Tony Beard, and I am in the 4th Ward, and I've lived there all of my life, and I've worked there for more than not in the ward, but in the city of St. Louis for more than 50 years. And I just want to come here and let you know that more than my fear of speaking in public is my fear of what's going to happen to St. Louis. So I'm looking at and I'm listening and hearing some things, and I want to thank you all for giving me an opportunity to speak. But more than that, I want to thank the Missouri Workers Center, who actually continued to contact me. And I want to thank the TikToker who sent me a TikTok back in October and said, if you need to be someplace, this is the place that you need to be. Because I haven't gotten any other notices. I don't know of this meeting except from those people. So thank you all for calling and continuing to contact me to get the word out there. Beyond that, I just want to say that I see that it's very important that you know who we are and where we are from. And I hope equally that the people that did the survey are from St. Louis also. I don't know, but I would like to think that they are. And the other thing I want to say is all of the good things that people are presenting and saying is going to happen. For example, the schools, the kids aren't going to see the money. I don't. I've been here for a long time. I've experienced it when the boats came and they said, oh, all this money is going to go to the kids. I don't know what kids they went to, but they didn't go to the city of St. Louis. As far as the utilities, I don't think the company or whoever it is doing this big investment and wanting this thing to come to St. Louis is going to pay that electricity bill. Ameren has been notorious for having us foot the bill on things in their name. For example, the energy assistance thing. I saw it on my bill and I called to ask what it was for. And they said, oh, that's because people who can afford to buy new windows, refrigerators, washers, and dryers that were energy efficient, we put that on your bill. I was like, what? But I can't afford a new washer or dryer, but it was still on my bill. So I just want to say I'm a senior and I want to keep living in this city for as long as I plan to keep living in this city, but I can't afford some things. And when you keep adding on, people talk about the utilities and the water and the electricity, but along with that, along with water comes an increased sewer bill and a bunch of other things. So I'm not interested, and I know that you hear me, and you know that I'm on team not in my backyard, not in my community. So I thank you all for listening. I would also like to ask that if you are the people that are going to be voting, you're saying there's not going to be a vote tonight, but if you're the people that's going to be voting, please listen to the people in your ward. And then you can make your decision off of that. Thank you.
Dakota Eichmann.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Dakota Eichmann. I live in the 6th Ward, and I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. The Planning Commission's research is nice, and it's very much well needed. It's very thorough. The categorization between different levels of data centers is convenient, but we've all seen the kinds of centers that are going up right now. It's not the ones that can, fit above a restaurant. We're talking about this right now because this is going to be a solution for the generative AI that's being pushed on us by the technocrats and the billionaires that want to come up and eat land up in our city. I'm not going to go and reiterate all of the different environmental and ethical and cultural and financial reasons why data centers are a bad idea, but and even the report was clear that all centers over 75 megawatts are going to cause increased electric rates for consumers, going to make our electrical grid more fragile. We don't need that in the city. We know what we want, and we've just told you what we want. We don't want these massive data centers in our backyard, and I don't want you to let business interests come and tell you what we've just told you, tell you something different than what we just told you. Don't let them misrepresent our demands, and don't write us off as crazy. We know what we want. We've done the research. We've seen the news. The people have told you what we want. We're not asking for transparency. We're not asking for clarity of language. We're asking for no by right construction and a moratorium on these massive data centers that aren't going to do anything but eat up land and energy. So, what do we really need this for? It's not going to be making people's lives better. Maybe you'll write an email or two, but it's going to be surveillance, and it's going to be taking people away from their jobs. You can hear that the people's trust in the St. Louis government has been eroded after decades and decades of neglect and disinvestment. I'm imploring you right now, do the right thing. Let's turn this around before it's too late and we'll do something else. Thanks.
Ben West.
Oh, hello. My name is Ben West. I'm from the 8th Ward, and I would like to speak for a bit about heat islands. And as a helpfully demonstrative example, I would like to talk about the Armory Innovation District project because it is before you for review nevertheless. This would be a proposed 120 megawatt data center, and it would radiate virtually all of its power, all of the power sent to its rack mount servers as heat to the outside through the facility's cooling plant. This portion of exhaust heat is not altered by the efficiency of its cooling system, and for a hyperscale data center, that could be 60 to 80% of total power used. Indeed, practically all electricity consumed by data centers is in effect is converted into waste heat that the building must shed. I'm going to do a little math. To simplify with round numbers, if we take the 100 megawatt figure over the 11-acre site on market, this turns into 2,250 watts per square meter. This is an extreme amount. It is actually more than twice the amount of heat that the sun sends to the ground, which is 1,000 watts per square meter. It also could cause, as best I could tell, an 18 Fahrenheit degree temperature rise in the immediate vicinity as a heat island, and that could be potentially lethal in midsummer days. Even at half this density, it is still higher than the heat density of heavy industry sites like steel forges and aluminum smelters. And the tentative mitigations laid out in this regulatory framework, which is well-intentioned and very thorough, cite things like cool roofs and planting trees, and simply those cannot abate this density of heat emission. So as a regulatory remedy, the city, for example, is perfectly capable of regulating smoke from smokestacks to make sure that it doesn't adversely affect the health of people from surrounding properties. You can also regulate extreme heat emission because that is also air pollution. And furthermore, for especially large sites, like, for example, the Armory Center, the city should require that they commission a environmental impact study by appropriately credentialed and impartial professionals about what potential heat island effects could be so that they can be effectively mitigated, or you simply turn the power down. So thank you very much.
David Lambiaso.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate you for holding this hearing and all the thoughtful comments and regulatory body work that you put in place here. I'm David Lambiaso. I'm from outside of the city. I've been in the data center industry for 15 years. It's sustained myself, my family, and I built communities around data centers. So I know that a lot of people here are very passionate about data centers. Just want to address that first because I live in a community, and you can look it up, Ashburn, Virginia. It's the hub of data centers, and it's one of the most wealthy individual counties and cities in America. So the impact that it has on the community is great. To ignore that is to not look outside your own community, because it is very important to bring these jobs to the community. I apologize because I'm very passionate about this, because I know that jobs are very important to everyone here. And it's important to realize that saying no to data centers is saying no to progress and jobs that will be brought to this community, not only on construction, but also for continued use and all the industries, steel workers, electrical workers. The entire ecosystem of growth is going to be created through these jobs. Just on the points within here, great regulations, that can be improved, the definitions can be improved, the noise constraints. I think you should be looking at your surroundings. If you're saying that you need to be down to 55, 50 decibels, but you're next to a highway, I would look at the consideration of what that highway is generating from a noise impact. I don't disagree with the involvement of the community and to push regulation on this. Just want to make sure that it's done thoughtfully and impactfully for the betterment of the community, for jobs, and for everyone here, right? This is about job growth and about bringing this community to a next level. So, I mean, I drive through this community and I want to see it change too. Thank you.
Chris Recheck.
Hello, my name is Chris Reinick. I'm from Lime, just south of the city. Current state laws, particularly Senate Bill 4, in conjunction with the Missouri Public Service Commission's large load tariff, is not enough to protect St. Louis residents from the undue, unfair, and unethical rate raises that would follow with any of these developments. Third-party professionals have recommended city officials explore ways to mitigate risks and uncertainties. It is my recommendation that we take extensive and proactive measures to do so. I'm asking that the Planning Commission staff revise the framework to not allow any new conditional use permits for any of the 3 types of data centers classified by the commission until we are able to better study the long-term impacts to be had on residents by these developments and eliminate any and all uncertainties, all unknowns and uncertainties the commission staff has, as well as the public. Meta's 1 million square foot facility in Kansas City, Missouri just became operational in August of last year, only about 6 months ago. Also, in August of last year, Kansas City officials approved a data center campus spanning almost 400 acres to host 6 more hyperscale centers in the Kansas City metro area. I think that Kansas City area officials have done exactly what St. Louis officials should not do. Allow these developments and those involved to take unfair advantages of residents and place unnecessary burdens upon us, whether they be financial or otherwise. I believe Kansas City is the perfect example for St. Louis area officials, including City Planning Commission and the Board of Aldermen, to take time to better learn and understand from, particularly in aspects regarding how current state regulations, or the lack thereof, will affect how Missouri utility providers and data center developers ultimately wind up sharing energy infrastructure costs and operations with area residents. As stated in the Commission's report, these figures are currently difficult to ascertain. These figures can't actually be ascertained until we have long enough time to study these effects. If I could just go on for a moment, I'm asking that the commission not issue any new conditional use permits for data centers of any type within any zoning districts, not allow any data center developments of any type that are not already operational in any zoning districts. And I'm also asking for elimination of any by right zoning allowances for data center developments of any type in any zoning districts. I would like to see these protections at least 10 years until we have all have a much better understanding of these developments and the associated industries and what policies and regulations are necessary, rather than perpetually chasing the negative impacts with policies after they've already taken effect. I'm asking the Planning Commission to do anything and everything possible within its authority to protect St. Louisans and show us overwhelming representation rather than showing that for outside corporate interests. Thanks.
Delaney Swan.
Hi, my name is Delaney Swan. I live in the 9th Ward, and I echo many other comments with regard to data centers. I don't think it's necessary to go along with an expansion of data center capacity, especially given the economic volatility of AI and other end uses such as cryptocurrency. The only good I believe can come out of data centers is the leveraging of venture capital dollars to build necessary infrastructure such as renewable energy. That is why, if the commission ignores the community members who are advocating against data centers inclusion in the city, I'm advocating for renewable energy regulations that ask for upfront investments in renewable energy, including city or community-owned generation that supports St. Louis's energy needs in the long run. I also echo my community members' calls for a no by right zoning, clearer standards for community engagement, and no inclusion of data centers downtown. Thank you.
Cass Miles.
Hello, my name is Cass. I'm a gardener at Forest Park. Data centers will be harmful to Missouri and its citizens. The list of reasons why is extensive, as you've heard this evening. Let's focus on water for a moment. Data centers can use 5 million gallons of water per day. 5 million gallons of water per day. Recently, the United Nations stated that we have entered a global water bankruptcy, meaning we have done irreversible damage to our water systems. Rather than put in harmful data centers that will waste millions of gallons of water daily, that water should be used instead for watering trees that we've had to plant in Forest Park to replace the ones that we lost from the F3 tornado. That water should instead be used for watering community and family gardens that feed people and pollinators. That water should be used for drinking. St. Louis does not want this data center. It is harmful to Missouri and its citizens. Folks in other states are already suffering from data centers. In Indiana, folks' electric bills have increased by hundreds of dollars. As you can hear, we can't even pay our bills right now. In Texas, they're boiling their water because it's not safe to drink. In Tennessee, people are horribly sick from air pollution because of data centers. This is about survival now. Data centers will be our demise. We survived before AI and data centers, but we will not survive with them. Thank you.
Jenna McDonald.
Jenna McDonald, Ward 5. Again, we are in a global water bankruptcy. I don't even know why we're entertaining the idea of building something that's going to waste our drinking water, knowing how precious and finite it is. We're in an affordability crisis. Again, why are we entertaining the idea of something that would increase our utilities? How would it impact me personally? I'm an actor, writer, and filmmaker in St. Louis, and St. Louis is a beautiful, creative city filled with talent. Within recent years, St. Louis passed tax incentives for larger film and TV projects to be made here, which has already brought a couple of awesome working opportunities for us. However, if the data centers are built here, it's going to increase our local, electricity and screw up our water, and I reckon filmmakers won't want to shoot their projects here. Not to mention generative AI steals from artists without compensation and takes away creative jobs. Consider how many other types of jobs will be automated away by allowing data centers to continue to spread. So, overall, data centers are going to hurt my income in multiple ways, increase my bills, which I can't afford anyway, and pollute my city, which we won't really even understand the full extent of the environmental impact and damage of these data centers for years to come, but we know it ain't good. I don't want data centers in St. Louis or in Missouri or in general. So don't kid yourself. We are digging our own graves while filling the pockets of billionaires. Are we that stupid? Step up and protect your constituents. I don't want the Board of Aldermen to process new applications. I don't want new conditional use hearings and no by right zoning for data centers. All right. Thank you.
Riley Young.
Hi, I'm Riley Young. I live up in Florissant. I'm in St. Louis a lot, though. This does affect the entire metro area and beyond. Our area already has such a long history of having the soil and air and water contaminated, whether that's up in Coldwater Creek around where I live, or the contaminated wells in St. Charles, or all of East St. Louis being poisoned all the way down to Eureka. I really do think that it's very likely, like other people have said, we won't know the long-term consequences of this for a long time. We already have so much that needs cleaned up. People have suffered long-term health consequences and death from other contamination around the area. Also with specifically AI data centers providing services that we don't want or need, whether that's the mass surveillance or generating AI slop content. I'm especially worried for my nieces and nephews and friends' children growing up, the next generation. It's getting harder to tell what's real or not online. It's getting harder to maintain privacy. It's getting harder to know that you're going to have job security, your privacy and safety always increasingly at risk. So I really do think that any short-term benefits that these data centers might provide are really outweighed by the long-term consequences that are more than likely, as we've seen throughout the nation. There are so many of these larger AI data centers that have caused massive problems for the communities. I really don't want to see that here. So I am asking that the Board of Alders consider a moratorium on AI data centers specifically, but a moratorium on applications for more data centers, and also no by right zoning for data centers of any size. Thank you.
Lauren Fila.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I live in Maplewood, and I'm the co-chair of the Eco-Socialist Green Party of Eastern Missouri, which represents St. Louis City and the surrounding areas that would be affected by this. This fall, we collected over 13,000 signatures from residents that signed saying they wanted no more data centers in St. Louis, that we wanted a moratorium, not regulations, but actually a meaningful pause to allow the public to have meaningful input. And since then, there's been even more overwhelming response that people do not want these here. There's no way to regulate the harm out of AI data centers. And I brought a graph to help show that. But just for a little context, there's, I think, 13 data centers here in St. Louis. They're involved in co-location and cloud computing. None are involved in AI. According to Business Insider, the biggest one is 1 megawatt. Now look at this. This is the improved version. This is the regulated version. Over 75 megawatts. Huge. Look at that. Right through North City. This is the improved version, right through the lowest income, most impacted areas of our city. Look at this. Highest asthma rate cluster. This is from the city's website. These are the people that are hospitalized with asthma. These are the people that die from asthma. 1-for-1 match right here, 75 megawatt data centers. And that doesn't even get into the 5 to 70 watts, still huge, that would be permitted to run through downtown and right through the center of the city. The regulations route is never going to be enough. And I could, if I had more time, I could go into closed loop water systems, which actually use less water on site, but end up using more power and more water overall to go into the water that goes into the coal production. Look, Kara Spencer has said that these large scale data centers are coming anyway. So we should build them. We should get some of the financial benefits, but this is a false choice. There's nothing that says that we have to build these. We don't consent to that. We don't surrender to that. Residents will be paying the cost for this in our asthma treatment bills and our power bills by killing our environment. We can't undo this Pandora's box once it opens. So my testimony is for a moratorium, for a ban, for no more data centers in St. Louis. Thank you.
July Hampton.
Hello, my name is July Hampton, and I am a lifelong proud resident of the 14th Ward. I am also in my 3rd year of preschool teaching, and as an educator, I must ask that we have a moratorium on these AI data centers. It is not okay that we are subjecting our children to an internet that is not real. We cannot do this. We must stop this. We all care about children. We all want to think about children. My opposition to the AI data center stems from my relationship with my nieces, my nephews, and my students. Children cannot tell the difference between me roaring like a lion and pretending and an actual lion roaring at them. So why are we subjecting them to these images where we as adults cannot tell that they are real? We cannot do this to our children. We must stop. Moratorium now. No AI data centers in St. Louis. Thank you.
Kat Logan Smith.
I'm Kat Logan Smith, 2nd Ward, or 7th Ward, 7th Ward. Sorry, I got lost track. Things change. I'm going to try to be quick, but this is a lot, and I had to already cut several hundred words out. So here goes. You have my full comments in writing with details, and I'm willing to add more to that. But I do think that the previous speaker is right. The children need us to do something strong, really, really strong. We're in a unique place with data centers right now. We have to seize this opportunity to make real decisions, and the staff recognize that with this document, and it's just a beginning. And I want to thank the planning staff for their work because they did work hard. They're not done yet, but they worked hard. Okay. We got to keep this landscape in mind. We got to remember the big picture, y'all. To quote Dorothy, we are not in Kansas anymore. Okay. This isn't honest businessmen. This isn't good business. This isn't anything you'd ever want to trust. This is the stuff that's coming up in the Epstein files. Okay. This is the kind of trash that this generative AI fuels, and we need to step on it. Okay. We need to stop it now. We're in a new landscape. Generative AI fueled by LLMs creates a wild and foreign landscape in which to install a regulatory framework. So the billionaire benefactors have embraced, moved fast, and break things, and our children are on that list. Okay? Their tech has used its powers of persuasion to goad young people to suicide. Okay? It has been used to put the power of mass surveillance and targeting into the hands of lawless actors. It's been used to generate fake media and most recently to empower users to undress non-consenting people using the power of deep fakes and the ubiquitous of pornography, because this is the kind of garbage that these AI centers were trained on. And the people in Kenya who were hired for $2 an hour to train that data went to mental health after that. They got traumatized. This is garbage, and we don't have to have it in our community at all. And the industry right now is built out enough for us to pause, for us to stop, for us to watch, for us to measure, for us to consider, and soberly deliberate how to proceed. And anybody who hypes AI and pressures us is selling us something we don't want to buy. Thank you.
Keith Rose.
Good evening. My name is Keith Rose. I'm a resident of the 6th Ward. I'm also the 6th Ward committeeman. And I've been thinking about data centers for a while now. My elder brother is actually a data center engineer, and he helped manage the data center a few blocks from here on Tucker for years. So I've had these conversations for quite a while before they were in the public consciousness. And I can tell you that my brother has repeatedly stressed to me that AI data centers are a completely different animal than what we've built before. So I am very happy to hear that the proposal we've seen tonight does make an effort to differentiate between different types of data centers. Nevertheless, I encourage you to listen to our neighbors and slow down this process. There's a mad dash in city halls across the country to lure in tech billionaires and pray that their town is the one to strike gold. Commissioner Miller was right to compare today's AI bubble to a gold rush mentality. And I understand the pressure from corporate developers to get in first, but St. Louisans don't want to lose this race to the bottom. What happens when the AI bubble bursts? Do you remember how the 2008 financial crisis left buildings here in downtown halfway renovated for years? The developers didn't care. These big businesses will cut and run too, leaving residents holding the bag. And I'd also like to say that I was particularly disturbed that tonight's presentation gave only a cursory mention of data centers' impact on our climate, saying that the city needs to work more on fleshing out that issue. That is not good enough. Our neighbors continue to suffer the consequences of environmental destruction in the name of industrial construction. Severe winter storms, summer flash floods, childhood asthma, lead poisoning, powerful tornadoes. These are not merely acts of God, but the products of short-sighted mindset that puts productivity and profits over people and planet. I hope you'll notice that apparently every single person who has spoken in favor of expanding data centers here tonight is apparently being paid to be here. Meanwhile, dozens of other St. Louisans have sat here for hours to say no. Thank you.
John Kaufman.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Kaufman. I'm here today on behalf of the Consumers Council of Missouri. We are a statewide consumer organization specializing in utility rates, and our offices are in the city, I believe in the 9th Ward in the CIC building on Sarah Street. And my main message to you today is that the Senate Bill 4 passed by the legislature and the large load tariff conditions that you saw and that are in the staff report are not nearly enough to mitigate the impact on electric rates. These data centers, and I'm not telling you whether or not to go ahead with this project, but I want you to know that if the projections are correct, these each new data center is going to have a significant dollar impact on every family as they sit down at the kitchen table and try to pay their utility bills. We've already seen electric rates go up by some measure 37% in Missouri recently. And this is even before some of the other provisions in Senate Bill 4 which our conservative estimate is more than $1,000 per household per year. This is the legislation pushed by Governor Kehoe and by the Public Service Commission itself. This large load data set was just a part of that. And we also know from demographics in Missouri that most, or right around 50% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. And so every additional unnecessary extra added to their electric bill is going to cause some people to become insolvent, unable to pay their monthly bills. They're going to fall further behind. They may lose their house. And so this is very serious stuff. And I don't have time to go into all the different provisions about why the large load tariff that Ameren, Missouri is touting is not good enough, but it certainly doesn't cover all of it. And there will still be subsidy. There will still be a cost to others. And so my answer is, if you are going ahead with this, please look at community benefit agreements, community benefit funds that go directly to the impacted folks in St. Louis who have to pay electric bills and water bills that are going to be impacted by this. And so I understand the tax benefits. I don't really see many other benefits to this, but it will have just as much negative impact on the daily bills of families in St. Louis. And so please consider getting this money up front and making sure that you mitigate that harm. Thank you.
David, last name begins with the D.
Hello, I'm David Donishfruz. I am a data center developer. Want to thank you guys for taking the time and for the proposal you put together. I can tell you that I've been to many of these meetings across 13 different states in this country, and many of those stakeholders in those communities haven't put forth half the time or research and effort that you guys have put into the report and the proposal you guys have put forth. Much of it is very much common sense, and I think a very thoughtful approach on how to handle this obviously very sensitive issue. I have 4 children myself, and what I can say is, taking a common sense approach where I don't want my kids playing at a park next to a data center, that makes sense. But putting a data center in between a railroad and a freeway next to a massive substation, my kids aren't going to play there either. So I would just encourage and hope that you guys continue this path that you're on with a very thoughtful approach and use a common sense approach to kind of a site by site or project by project approach. And then speaking to the folks in this room who have concern about, AI, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with some of the philosophical things you're saying. My kids, I don't let them play Roblox because it's a very predatory environment, and I'm a data center developer. However, I'm not going to stop like WashU or Boeing or SLU or any other large organization who needs local compute with low latency to not have a data center close by because they need that to grow their organizations and support their constituents. So, I would just encourage you guys to continue this a common sense approach, a thoughtful approach like you are, and hopefully we can find some middle ground.
Will Dressel.
Good evening. I'm William Dressel. I'm a native born and raised Ward 1 and Jefferson County current resident. I agree with your comment that as these continue to pop up, it's the one proposed outside of Fest is about 4 miles from my home. It impacts the entire community. I really appreciate the discourse and the amount of passion and organization in the room. I think that level of discourse is not only healthy, but it's necessary. Whether you do or you don't do a project, and I'm agnostic to that. But the idea that, we would potentially not even discuss the matter, I think is a bit extreme. So to continue a process that allows folks, whether they are or not, I would say in favor of doing these developments, From my standpoint, I'm a 20-year industry veteran of energy development of all sorts of energy. So this is obviously impacting my industry as well. Watching the industry and solutions and utilities hear the overall consensus of all stakeholders is very encouraging from my point of view. Watching companies create their own microgrid solutions that may be behind the meter and do not impact current baseload within utility distribution systems is a way that I think some towns and communities are starting to adapt, overcome, and address some of these concerns. When we look at water consumption, a 15-minute period during the Super Bowl flushed about 350 million to 1 billion gallons of water during the halftime Super Bowl. So water consumption is something that is very regularly done. There are ways to mitigate and contain the overall use of water. So as someone who is a native and is locally here, I obviously did not know about the meeting. I didn't have any prepared statements, but was asked by friends as someone who is an industry watchdog. I would say that's how I'd like to present myself here today. But always make, as I think we all should as community members, make ourselves available as we all put you in your seat for folks to say that the community has spoken. I think that we've also spoken by electing our officials and putting faith in our officials. I think both sides of all spectrums would agree that the trust and transparency of the institutions have been put in question more than once. I also think that it is our duty as constituents and members of your committee that we hold true to at least the spirit of the deal in which our institutions are put up and continue to execute. So once again, appreciate everyone's time and look forward to continued discourse and figuring out ways to continue to educate and bridge the gap of miscommunication. Thank you very much.
Claire Miller.
Hi, my name is Claire Mueller. I'm a Maplewood resident, but I work in Ward 11. Thank you to the planning staff for your preparedness. Having previously been at the Franklin County meeting where this was not the case, it was very appreciated. And if anyone would like information on what happened at the Franklin County meeting, please find me later. I will be brief as I agree with many of the points previously mentioned, like concerns over longevity for the city and the region, feeling inevitable around data centers, and the concern around utility rates, particularly with changes included in SB4 that allow for construction work in progress. Look that up. But I would just like to point out that we were recently facing Missouri SB 849, which aimed at placing a moratorium on the construction of new and current solar projects in the state. And I have serious concerns about the state of our state's stance on renewables and worry that even if regulations on renewables are written into a framework, there's no way to truly achieve sustainability and thus responsibility. Despite this due diligence and research, I'm still opposed to data centers in our communities. The amount of water, a finite resource that will be used, the air pollution and noise pollution and light pollution, like we live in the Mississippi Flyway, we're interrupting processes like migration. None of this can be justified. We need to focus on real challenges our region is already facing instead of introducing more. We can find other ways to bring money and jobs and recognition to St. Louis and make our legacy one of an intentionally planned and thriving community, not one of pollution and big empty buildings. Thanks.
Just a note, if there is anybody in the overflow room who has signed up to speak, please begin making your way to the boardroom so we can cut down on travel time. Nick Johnson is up next.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Nick Johnson, 6th Ward. Love my city. Don't want a big generative AI data center smack in the middle of it. I think most use I've seen of generative AI is evil, surveillance, resource expensive, image generation, stealing intellectual property of creators, etc. I don't have a ton to say and would prefer to allow more time to people who are more fiery and more researched. But I think my bottom line for today is, from what I've heard, or from what I've read through the proposed restrictions and heard today, this proposal as it stands doesn't explicitly prevent the aggressive approach of the proposed Armory data center, which is slated for an unrestricted zoning area and may consume much more power than the large data center category defines. I'd personally prefer further review of a definition of data centers and prevention or moratorium of conditional use approval of any data center projects until an agreeable definition is reached for data centers. Yeah, thank you.
Patrick Brown.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Patrick Brown, resident of the 9th Ward, and someone with a great affinity for the work you're doing this evening. So I appreciate you being here and for the invitation. I am also representing Ameren, Missouri this evening. Like many folks here, reading through the regulations, feel like there's a great framework in place, and just have a few points for potential additional consideration. To begin, the utility willing to serve letter. We're a regulated utility. We don't have an option to be willing to serve. We have an obligation regulatorily to serve any customer that is eligible. And so we believe within the large load tariff, there are metrics there that we could indicate to the city that would give the city an understanding of how serious or ready a project may be, and would like to continue talking about that versus some sort of form letter specifically saying that we're willing to serve. That may not be a good indicator. Secondly, the requiring specific renewable energy goals can become challenging in a market like ours, which again is regulated, and it presents a lot of several uncertainties for projects in the city that the city is not in a position to oversee or regulate. To begin, we have to seek state approval before we're able to build any new generation. That's often a prolonged sort of process, and success is not guaranteed. Approval is not guaranteed. The flexibility, I think maybe working flexibility into the types of sources that are available for projects to meet the city's goals around renewable energy might be a better approach. And with 2 seconds, I look forward to continuing that conversation at a time that makes sense. So thank you for your time, and thank you.
Letitia Wolken.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Leticia Wolken, and I'm a resident of Shrewsbury in near St. Louis County. Today, I urge you not to allow AI data centers to be built in St. Louis. Several months ago, St. Louisans came together to tell our representatives we deserve better than AI data centers that strain our power grids, create constant noise and air pollution, hog our precious drinking water, and drive our electricity costs to unsustainable levels. Our city should prioritize people who live and work in our communities, who are saying over and over again that we demand meaningful development like affordable housing, green space, and places where community members can relax and be at home. Instead, the Armory is trying to force through another AI data center we've already clearly stated we do not want in this vital part of the Central Corridor. We won't be fooled into agreeing to sacrifice the livability of our city for specious promises of future jobs servicing a hot, polluting AI data center warehouse. In the Central Corridor of St. Louis, we're extremely fortunate to have an influx of young people and students who attend places like St. Louis University, Washington University, Harris-Stowe State University, and the College of Pharmacy. Spend more than a few minutes in the area and you'll see students everywhere, walking, biking, driving, and taking public transit. A noisy data center emitting air pollution 24 hours a day, 7 days a week will seriously and materially affect the lived experience of anyone in the central corridor as either a visitor or a resident. Water will be more precious and electricity costs will go up, even for people already struggling to make ends meet. Data centers are the house guests you don't invite because they'll take up your resources, dirty your living space, and never leave. The Armory and data center developers are not being forthcoming or transparent about their plans, and they're unwilling to listen to the people who live here when we say we don't need their promises and we don't want them in our city. The St. Louis community deserves the ability to safeguard our resources and our quality of life, rather than developer dollars dictating poor circumstances we have to live with thereafter. Thank you very much.
Francisco Corrales.
Good evening, and thank you for your time tonight. And I wanted to thank the community for showing up and showing out. My name is Francisco Corrales, and my family and I have been Dutchtown residents for over 15 years and St. Louis residents for over 25 years. We've been against data centers since we saw how they affected other cities in Tennessee and Georgia. And St. Louis needs to update their zoning codes by including rules and regulations for data centers. The Planning Commission should delay processing of any data center applications until the zoning code is updated by this fall. The zoning code should at least include no by right zoning for data centers, density regulations, and environmental protections for St. Louis. Consider how the automation of these data centers enable and will not only impact the very people that work on them, but the livelihoods of the citizens of this very city. It affects people from all walks of life here. We all struggle with or know someone who struggles with utility bills or medical bills. These data centers would only put a further strain on people's shared struggles. And that has been the topic all throughout tonight from the community. It has been about shared struggles. These data centers will then continue to exacerbate an already bad problem within St. Louis, which one of our community members has already brought up. St. Louis has one of the highest asthma rates in the United States. And less than 2 years ago, St. Louis was already ranked among one of the highest deaths per asthma-related causes. That was in September of 2024. The air pollution from one of these data centers alone would probably make a already bad situation for asthmatic people even worse. My mom and fiance are the very people that it would hurt. I want to reiterate that what we're asking for is just for your help in protecting an already vulnerable people in an already vulnerable financial situation. Please don't let these companies get away with just the bare minimum when we know that they would settle for less. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Heidi Budd. Heidi Budd. Great, thank you. Stefan Almery.
Praise to Odin, because when I asked, he gave me wisdom. And praise to Tyr, because when I asked, he taught me how to seek justice. Praise to Thor and Freya, because when I asked, they rode with me against my enemies. I know that the deal is already done and that you all are going to go ahead and sign over our city to these folks behind us. I know this because in October, $28 million was already given to Ameren, Missouri, so that man would be here tonight to lobby. That $28 million was given by other stakeholders like these a lot of them white men behind me with their nice shoes and their nice shirts and all of that. And they come up here like they already won because they know they've already given y'all the money, or they've given the right stakeholders the money. We live in an oligarchy. I don't propose to play with you all. I know we don't have a democracy in this country anymore. But you all sit up here and act like you're doing this for the good of the people. It's a show. So I encourage all the citizens here to understand that the plan is in play. The same billionaire that gave Kara Spencer her last 100,000 that she needed to bring her over the finish line, Bob Clark, he has started his own company offshoot of Clayco that has already opened up about 8 data centers in St. Louis, in the St. Louis area. 2 of them across the river over in St. Charles. There's about 5 of them right here, or 8 of them right here in St. Louis. The billionaires have won. It is time for war. This is war. They are taking our resources. They want to socialize the cost along to us while they reap all the profit. The deal is done, you all. They will sign it over to them next, whenever that day comes. Don't act like it's not coming.
Marlo Price. Marlo Price. Matt O'Leary.
Good evening. My name is Matt O'Leary. I live in the 8th Ward. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington Avenue Community Improvement District. And thank you for your time. I represent portions of downtown with significant vacancy that has been dramatically escalating over the events of the last 5 or 6 years since the pandemic. A struggle we have downtown is with demand for every asset class from hotels to office to residential to retail, you name it. We need uses to fill up downtown's vacant properties and properties that are going to become vacant, otherwise that will go blighted and stop being productive assets for downtown St. Louis. Data centers are key assets already. They've been around in downtown St. Louis for 25 years. They've generated jobs. They've generated all kinds of benefits for downtown at this point in time. Most of those data centers are what are called edge of network data centers, which focus on improving latency, which helps facilitate our digital economy. The proposed ordinance does a great job of balancing the positives and negatives of data centers, capitalizing on their potential to drive economic development while mitigating the negatives of those data centers. I applaud the effort of the staff. There are a few rough edges in the proposed ordinances that others have spoken to. I won't take your time on that. I submitted those, my comments earlier today. Thank you for your time and appreciate your consideration.
Chair, we've reached the list of the in-person commenters, but I do want to ask if there's anybody who has joined the meeting by phone and therefore was unable to sign up to speak, that you can press *6 to unmute and provide your comment now. Dylan, are there any phones online? All right, Chair, back to you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public hearing for tonight. So at this time, I'll ask for a motion to close our public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderwoman Saulnier, second from Commissioner Fowler. Can you call the roll, please? Excuse me?
I withdraw my motion.
So.
Withdraw your second. Withdraw your second.
I withdraw my second. Yes.
What do we want to do here?
Just keep going.
Yeah, but it's.
Does that mean we start at this point in the agenda, or because when we want you to present an updated presentation?
No.
To make a motion to continue public comment at a later date?
Right, so I was gonna say, why don't we make our motion to continue the item, public comment for a future meeting be scheduled, keep the written comments open, and we'll continue the public hearing as well.
Okay, I make a motion. I make a motion to continue the item in public comment to a future meeting to be scheduled and publicized, and to keep written comments open
And continue.
and to continue public hearing.
I second that.
So I have a motion from Alderwoman Sanye, a second from Commissioner Hubman. Thank you. Can you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonier.
Aye.
Sanye. Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair Bradley,
Aye.
and motion passes with our president voting aye.
Okay, thank you. So we heard a lot of comments tonight.
Oh,
and,
I'm sorry.
You know, I don't know, do you want to wrap up with some comments and then we'll see if the commissioners have any comments?
Sure. Yeah, I can share some thoughts. I just want to repeat, I think everybody's appreciation for people who took time out of their schedule, their evenings to be here and share your point of view. We were taking notes on all of the comments and they're very much appreciated. I just want to thank the rest of the planning staff team and other staff from other city departments who helped with this, and some of whom are here tonight and made this public hearing possible. So thanks also to other staff.
Excuse me,
But this time,
on the last vote, I forgot, Tracy.
forgot,
Tracy, yeah,
Tracy,
Boaz, she was present.
Commissioner Boaz, are you still with us?
Commissioner Boaz, are you still with us?
They're not
Okay.
allowing, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear? Yeah, I vote aye.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
All
Thanks
right.
for the clarification.
Uh-huh.
So without going through the role of all the commissioners and so forth, at this point, if you have a comment or a question from the commission, if you would just, ask that make the comment or ask the question, I think I want to give you all an opportunity to, be able to talk about some of the things you heard if you'd like to do that. So the floor is open.
I just wanted to say one thing. I've been to a lot of these over the years, and you guys ought to give yourselves a hand because you were very well behaved and very courteous to each other. And we appreciate that because that's not always the case. And some of you have seen and you've been to the other meetings across the area, and some of them haven't been as civil as this one. So I just appreciate that.
Yeah, so I really appreciate all the comments. I did hear a little bit of mistaking what body this is and the kind of the process of approval. So I'll just quickly run through some of the things. The reason why the Planning Commission is hearing regulations around data centers is because we asked for regulations to be developed in April of last year. So we as a body voted on a variety of zoning priorities that we wanted to hear and have the staff research. So that's something that we voted on without a specific proposal in front of us. And the Planning Commission are not elected, they're appointed. So Planning Commission and Board of Aldermen are different bodies. Both will hear zoning regulations, but they have to be initiated here at Planning Commission. Board of Aldermen cannot, any other can't initiate any kind of zoning changes to zoning regulations. So they can initiate a specific proposal for like so just some clarity there. Only the Planning Commission could have initiated this conversation on developing regulations. And so I'm very grateful that it does sometimes feel like we're behind the 8 ball, but the world of data center regulations has changed so much, even when we suggested that it be a priority in April of last year. So there's a lot of foresight from staff on this. I'm bringing this to the attention of the Planning Commission. So, but yes, so I just wanted to make a couple notes on that point, and I don't know if there's any other ones that you wanted to add.
On that topic, maybe the only other point of information for folks who would benefit is any specific well, I'll just say conditional use permits are not heard by the Planning Commission in the city of St. Louis. They are in most communities across the state, but that is not the case here. So this body specifically won't be reviewing any conditional use permit of any kind.
To that point, I heard mention of the Armory proposal a few times, and my understanding of that is that whatever we do here will have no effect on the Armory proposal, neither would a moratorium on data centers in general, because that's already going through the process. Is that correct?
New regulations, yeah, it's kind of a truism in zoning policy from a sort of due process principle that new regulations can't impact applications that have already been submitted. As to moratoria, I mean, I think the history of those in the city of St. Louis has been very issue specific. So I won't speak to that.
So not for sure. The answer is that's not for sure.
The only ones that have been enacted in the city were in response, in the context of litigation, I believe. Is that correct? Related to electronic message boards.
Well, I was asking the question of if for the data center that is currently in discussion at the next door to the Armory now, I think the question is, could a moratorium be applied to that? Or is it the case that no matter what is passed from this point moving forward, because they're already in the pipeline, they wouldn't be subject to a moratorium? Or is it dependent on the language in the legislation, or?
I'd defer personally to an attorney. Sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. I just wanted to highlight that it's not for sure.
Unless anybody else has a better.
There's been some discussion about this whole issue using the word project, and there are, as staff just mentioned, 2 projects that are finding their way through city processes or starting their way through city processes, which includes the conditional use process. That's not coming before you. That is starting in the works right now. What Marion has done tonight is talk about the project we have brought to you, which is developing new regulations about data centers in general. So that's certainly what we've been talking about tonight.
Don, your mic. Can you speak into your mic?
So that's certainly what we've been talking about tonight. But we know there's a context of other things going on in the community. The other thing, and we just made the motion, is approved that this committee hearing tonight, we've had it. We appreciate everybody coming. We appreciate the seriousness and the full scope that we've done. We have continued, we've closed it for tonight in terms of the time. We're going to continue it to a future meeting. You can still write your comments about our project that we're doing about developing regulations, and we will take it up at another meeting. And subsequently, there'll be a meeting where the Planning Commission votes on a set of approved regulations. So
I had one more. So one request I have for the next meeting is I would like to know more about how the House bill, was it 4, the one that would prevent new solar, how that would 894. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I was like, 4 seems like too low of a number. How that would how that interacts with what we're doing here.
Absolutely. I think the other requests for specific information that I heard, in addition to all of the really great feedback from the public, was a clearer picture of the sort of market environment and more of a sort of cost benefit fiscal analysis. Are there other types of information, which we may have to lean on kind of our colleagues that have more expertise in that area, but are there other types of information? I'll just put that out there to the commission, other types of information that would help.
Is there a way to get a read on sort of the market capacity for data centers by type in our city so that we can have a sense of what we're looking at? I know that's probably a really difficult question to answer, but
we can try, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one thing on, you had a slide up there that showed
kind of the size. It had CVS as one, and then it also had Jay's International. Can we get a couple visuals for how big this would actually, like what was the hyperscale? The hyperscaled one, just so people can, and myself can see what that actually looks like, and also kind of like identifying sites. That way we can kind of see like what that impact is, or if it is even viable at this point to see something like that. I know that there could be stacked situations or high rise situations or whatever, but just seeing the square footage would help kind of help everybody kind of see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. The one caveat I'll put to that is one of the things we're also kind of surprised to learn in our research is that the correlation between power use and like the physical size of a building is like increasingly difficult to nail down and predict. It really depends on like the chips that are powering the servers. But nonetheless, we can paint a picture of that.
Hey, any other comments, commissioners? Seeing none, let's move to Don for the executive director's report. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, I definitely took some notes, so I'm gonna read through them thoroughly. But I did hear some calls for us to take more of a look into renewable energy options. So that is something I definitely would like to ask for. I think we should dig into that a bit more and figure out the pathway forward for that. I also heard references to a digital divide and that people didn't see this meeting anywhere. I do have an Instagram called @AlderSanye, and I do post the meetings when we have them, as do many of my colleagues. So if you're on social media and you're looking to follow that, you can. You can also shoot an email to myself or Alderwoman Schweitzer or the president's office, and we can kind of add you to listservers and make sure you know about these things as they come up. I also heard people have a specific ask about community benefits agreement, including some of the commissioners, and I'm definitely in strong support of having that conversation with a bit more clarity on what the possibilities are there. I heard a lot of people say they don't support no right by permit. I will add that we have no right by permit in place for shelters, and I think we should apply the same hesitancy that we do to shelters to data centers. So I think that's worthy of consideration. And someone said that this has been a done deal already and checks have been cut. I do think we should be careful of misinformation. Certainly, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, and I know it's not always seen, but hours and hours of conversations. I really do believe that the folks who are having this conversation are doing their best to balance all these interests. But I don't think that there's anyone that I've been in conversation with, and including the two women that are in front of us, to be honest, that have done a phenomenal job of weaving together all of these conversations. And in full transparency, I just want to remind you all that this commission did take a unanimous vote to approve a moratorium until there were regulations in place. It's not this body that's responsible for that. If you want to talk about responsibility for that, and I'm on this board, so I want to take accountability, that is your board of aldermen, and whatever conversations are had between the legislative branch and executive branch. But we are the people who have the power to do legislation. They made the recommendation, and from there, the legislation has to be passed. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch the hearing where we ended up discussing the executive order and the resolution that Alderwoman Schweitzer passed, I would encourage you to watch that, because on the floor, when we were having that discussion, I would encourage you all to get more perspective and insight into where your specific alderperson is on this issue and watch that resolution discussion. But two, I want to just be transparent with you all that when the conversation was had, the votes were not there to put a moratorium in place until regulations were developed. And that's why that conversation did not progress. I want to be honest with you all, as someone who is elected to represent you all and have these conversations, that I do think it is a very reasonable ask to say that we want a moratorium until regulations are developed. I absolutely support that. Do you have 8 people on your board of aldermen who support that? I don't know. I would be very curious to see, but I'm being very honest with you about my perspective and what happened with that conversation. I would encourage you to watch that meeting to see it. And so I just would hope that as you have these efforts, if you have not emailed your alderperson to say that you want a moratorium, and again, I know that there were broad asks that we want a moratorium in general. I'm going to be honest with you that I don't think that that's going to happen. But I think that you should start at, to me, what makes the most sense is that we have something being discussed right now that could go in place in our city, and we don't have any regulations for them besides the executive order. So I think it's a great time to make sure that your elected officials know that that's what you want. If you live in the 7th Ward, I'm pretty clear. Thank you all for coming to show up, and I'm pretty clear, and I just stated my position on the record. So I'm being transparent. Nobody's cut me a check. That's not the case, but I want you to understand like what that looks like, and know where to put the responsibility for that, because this board did their job, and there are some folks who said that it was a threatening recommendation. So I just want you guys to make sure you're following the facts of the conversation. And I also did, just hear a desire of, conditional use hearings until this is moving forward. Again, moratorium conversations have to happen, and it's not this body that has shown an unwillingness to have that conversation. And I just wanted to put that on record, and thank you all again for coming out this evening. And I hope to see and hear from my colleagues that y'all sent emails out the wazoo, and I hope tomorrow I see tags on Instagram and other places because you are having this conversation, because the time is near, and Friday is our last day to have any legislative conversations until May. So I want to be clear about a timeline and a sense of urgency that if that's what you desire, you got to do it, because I will absolutely use community support as much as I can to have that conversation, but it has to be a stronger call to specific alders, because right now the votes are not there. Thank you all for your time.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, it's probably a good time to morph into what is usually the concluding item, which is the executive director's report. But Miriam, you
Well,
have
just,
something?
I definitely heard and appreciate the concern about notification and access to information about this meeting. We have room for improvement on that front, absolutely. For now, I think my suggestion is if you would like to be notified of any future conversation on this topic, we should have included people's contact information in the sign up, but I added some sheets over there if you want to list your name and either your phone number or email, and we will make sure to share that with you for any future meeting. And you can share that with your friends and neighbors. That's all. I just want to make sure we're on a better path.
And what I wanted to do was just morph into this and have these two senior staff people remain at the helm here and talk about, thank you all for participating tonight. Miriam just made the announcement to remind yourselves, if you hear about something that we've put in some limited way, share it with others. We'll learn that about also sharing it ourselves in other places. And one of the things you've heard is there was certainly a heck of a lot of work done, led by Miriam, who is also, I want to make note, is working on a comprehensive overhaul of the zoning code, long overdue. And Alicia is in her management position, has recently just completed with consultants and community input, a sustainability plan for the city of St. Louis, which is, in this day and age, we're very proud that we've adopted that when, as we think about things nationally, are not really leaning towards those types of comments, those types of policies, but we have recently adopted a new sustainability plan. Thanks, Alicia, for that. And I'll just make note that we have more work to do in this realm before we reconvene again. And when we reconvene again, we'll have refined, and there'll also still be a continuation for the public hearing. And the other part is the Planning Commission that is before you tonight. The majority of the members are citizen members. There are others that come from the relationship in the city. We purposely have our meetings regularly at 5:30 in the evening to when we do have a public meeting, a public hearing. It's a little easier for you folks to find us. We much appreciate that. And I'll leave it at that. And thank you all for participating with us this evening. Mr. Chair. Okay, that concludes our business for tonight. Our next meeting is March 11th, 2026. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We are adjourned. Thank you. So sorry.